All right, what's up, everybody? My name is Alexander Medeiros. This is the Wi-Fi Gospel YouTube channel. Tonight, I'm going to be hosting a debate between Bryce J and Talon. On the topic, was the papacy taught at Chalcedon? It's going to be a great debate tonight. I appreciate all you being here. Make sure to like, share the stream, comment a bunch of times for the algorithm. It's going to be a huge debate, all right? Basically, the format, we're going to have 20-minute openings, 10-minute rebuttals, 15-minute cross exams, and then a 30-minute Q&A at the end. As far as the questions and answers go, we're going to be prioritizing super chats first, and then we'll get to the rest of the questions once we get through the super chats. So go ahead and send those super chats in if you want your question prioritized. I'm going to have our guests tonight introduce themselves. Talon, why don't you go first?
I am Talon. I am a Roman Catholic who defends the papacy. You can find my socials where you can find me is on TikTok, Rabbi Talon, YouTube, Rabbi Talon, my Twitter, Papist Talon, and Instagram, it's just Papist Talon.
It's awesome. Cool. Bryce?
Yep, my name is Bryce J. I'm an Eastern Orthodox apologist, and I just recently started studying the papacy and thought I wanted to argue about it now. So you can find me on TikTok at Bryce J Official and YouTube at Bryce J Official, and that's pretty much all I use.
Nice. Now I just have a little introduction video I put together in the spirit of since Christmas is around the corner, just lighten the mood a little bit. After the introduction video, we'll get started with Talon's opening statement.
Just hear those sleigh bells jingling-a-ring-a-ting-a-ting-a-ling-a-too. Ring-a-ling-a-ling-a-ting-a-dong-a-ding-a. Come on, it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride together with a Jew. Ring-a-ling-a-ting-a-ting-a-dong-a-ding-a. Outside the snow is falling and a friend.
Enough of that. Talon, on your first word, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer.
Amazing. Okay. Vatican I teaches that the Pope is the head of all churches, that he can speak infallibly when speaking ex cathedra, that he possesses immediate, ordinary, and universal jurisdiction, and that these truths has been believed since the beginning. Now note, my burden of proof is not to demonstrate that the entirety of Vatican I's teachings was explicitly present, meaning that the specifics and details, but rather the essence of Vatican I was made manifest in this debate. If I can successfully show this, then my burden of proof is fulfilled, and we can conclude, as Vatican I states, that this has been believed since the beginning. Papal supremacy is not the Pope being an absolute monarch, tyrannical dictator who is ruthless and does not care about the bishops. Papal supremacy, as defined by Vatican I, has three major aspects that I would like to put my focus on: universal, ordinary, and immediate jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction is when the Pope's jurisdiction can extend to all churches. Ordinary jurisdiction is essential and perpetual to the office. Immediate jurisdiction is when the Pope does not need secondary tools, meaning councils, emperors needing juridical consent amongst the bishops. Vatican I does not teach a God Emperor Pope, and he who does not bow down to the Pope is somehow a heretic. As Catholic bishops in the Catholic Church today admit, quote, being a Catholic does not mean following the Pope blindly, end quote. The Pope, is human like you and me. He can err and make mistakes like anyone else. But the only time when he cannot err is in the exercise of his infallible teaching authority assisted by God and the bishops. That's correct. God and the bishops. The bishops of the Catholic Church assist the Pope in formulating dogma, and once the bishops give their consent, the Pope defines what is to be universally held by the faithful. Bishop Gaser, in his Relatio, relates the following: it is true that the consent of the present preaching of the whole magisterium of the Church, united with his head, is a rule of faith even for pontifical definitions, end quote. Assisted by God, the definitions of the Roman pontiff are thereby of themselves, i.e. of God in it being infallible, and not of the consensus of the Church. The bishops play a role in formulating the decree, not making the decree infallible. With this, we can now prove the papacy at the Council of Chalcedon. In 448, Eutychius had become involved in a fresh theological controversy at Constantinople with St. Flavian of Constantinople. In 448, St. Flavian condemned Eutychius for his heretical assertions about our Lord Jesus Christ. In 449, Eutychius appealed to the Pope to reverse the decisions of the Synod of Constantinople. Pope Leo, upon hearing this, wrote to St. Flavian to know why Eutychius was condemned. The report of St. Flavian had not yet reached Rome, and in that letter, he called out Eutychius for his errors and described him as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Once the second letter of St. Flavian finally reached Rome, Pope Leo sided with Flavian, deeming him orthodox. Eutychius, while condemned, kept appealing to other bishops to side with him. One of the bishops was St. Peter Chrysologus. After declining to hear his appeal, he related the following, quote, we exhort you, honorable brother, to listen obediently to what has been written by the most blessed Pope of the city of Rome, since blessed Peter, who lives and presides in his own see, grants the truth of faith to those who seek it, For we in our zeal for peace and faith cannot hear cases about faith without the consent of the Bishop of Rome. St. Peter Chrysologus clearly understood that the Bishop of Rome was the interpreter of the faith and settled issues and matters in faith and morals, and that the East could not continue without the consent of the Bishop of Rome based on Rome's universal and ordinary jurisdiction. But Eutychus didn't listen. He asked the emperor to convene an ecumenical council, and in March 449, Theodosius II seconded that wish. St. Flavian, upon hearing a rumor council being held, urged the Pope to write a letter to resolve the entire issue, for there would be no need for an ecumenical council. Flavian related, the matter only requires your weight and support, which through your wisdom will at once bring about general peace and quietness, and the rumor synod will also be prevented. End quote. The East here thinks that the Bishop of Rome alone can settle the dispute in matters in faith and morals to render an ecumenical council useless in this case. So, for Constantinople, the Bishop of Rome's judgment alone was enough. This situation is how the official interpreter of Vatican I, Bishop Gaser, believes ex-cathedra documents arise. Gaser related the following, quote, the special exercise of this prerogative occurs when there arise somewhere in the church scandals against the faith, i.e. dissensions and heresies, and when the bishops of the individual churches are gathered together in provincial councils are unable to repress, so they are forced to appeal to the apostolic see regarding the case, or when the bishops themselves are infected by the sad stain of error. End quote. Pope Leo, in response, seconds his wish and produces the tome. Pope St. Leo sided with Flavian with his reasoning that an ecumenical council would be unnecessary, since his tome alone could settle the issue. Pope Leo willingly decided to go along with the council as of right now, only for respects to the emperor. Pope St. Leo set specific instructions to the council of Ephesus II that they are to accept the tome. He told Theodosius II that he was sending legates to represent him, and that they would offer a chance for repentance to those who held heretical beliefs. Leo related the following. Yet if he who has gone astray repents and entreats for pardon, he may receive the succor of priestly indulgence. But what the Catholic Church universally believes and teaches on the Lord's incarnation is contained more fully in the letter which I have sent to my brother and fellow Bishop Flavian. End quote. So the council's definition of faith was going to be the tome of Pope St. Leo. But to make a long story short of what happened during and after the council, Flavian was killed shortly after the council during his exile. Dioscorus anathematized the tome in Nicaea in 451, shortly before Chalcedon was convened. He excommunicated Leo and deposed multiple bishops without true, lawful, and canonical procedures. The two bishops that I like to put my focus on are Bishop Theodoret of Cyrus and Eusebius of Dorylaeum. Theodoret, in his appeal to Pope Leo, related the following, quote, for every reason it is fitting for you to hold first place, inasmuch as your see is adorned with many privileges. I endure you, the insults piled after all my labors on my poor gray head. Above all, I implore you to tell me whether I ought to put up with this uprighteous deposition or not, for I await your decision. If you bid me abide by the sentence of condemnation, I abide, and hence, therefore, I trouble no man, and will wait for the righteous tribunal of our God and Savior. End quote. Here we have an Eastern bishop deposed by an intended ecumenical council appealing to the Pope to reverse their decrees because he holds first place in many privileges. This is a proof of universal and immediate jurisdiction as defined by Vatican I. Bishop Eusebius of Dorylaeum, in his appeal to Pope Leo, related the following, quote, the apostolic throne, to your see I entreat your blessedness, pronounce the reversal and nullify of any unjust condemnation by the most blessed religious Dioscorus and of their decree, and give me back the dignity of my episcopate and communion with yourself, end quote. Here we have another bishop from the East appealing to Pope Leo to undo the decisions of the intended ecumenical council of Ephesus II. Eusebius of Dorylaeum too believed in universal and immediate jurisdiction as defined by Vatican I. Pope Leo, upon hearing this, annulled the intended ecumenical council of Ephesus II. The papal legates at the 10th session related the following in this matter, quote, a council where those lawless crimes were read out cannot be approved if all the proceedings there have been made null by the most blessed and apostolic bishop of the city of Rome. It is indeed imperative that we also petition the most mild and Christian emperor to decree in sacred law of his own that this council is not even to be named, end quote. The papal legates representing the Roman See said the Pope annulled an ecumenical council. Clearly, the papal legates believed in papal supremacy. Pope Leo urging Emperor Theodosius II to convene a new ecumenical council, but the emperor declined. The new Emperor Marcian agreed to convene an ecumenical council in the East, but the Pope soon realized that this action, of course, was unnecessary. For Pope Leo, it was sufficient to send legates in the East in order to collect signatures to his throne through the agency of St. Anatolius, the successor of Flavian in the Church of Constantinople. This would either restore communion to those unlawfully defrocked to the regretful clergy who came to their senses from their prior actions defending Dioscorus and Eutychius. Nevertheless, the Pope eventually submitted to the emperor's plans and prepared his legates to go east. Scholar Henry Chadwick related the following in this matter, quote, in Leo's judgment, however, the function of the Greek council was to manifest its own orthodoxy by submissively indicating its assent to the ruling already given by himself, the legitimate juridical successor of Peter, the Prince of the Apostles. It was axiomatic for Leo that the Roman See has received in guards the true apostolic tradition, is predestined by God for this service to the entire church, is therefore protected from leading the church astray, and in jurisdiction possesses a universal responsibility inherent in Peter's successor. End quote. The late Orthodox Archbishop and Professor of Canon Law, Peter L. Heulier, also concurs. In the thought of St. Leo, the goal of the assembly was to regulate the canonical situation of the bishops who had compromised themselves at Ephesus 449, and to reestablish the victims of Dioscorus and his followers in their rights. He considered the question of faith had already been settled by his tome. The only thing for the future assembly to do, according to the Pope, was to accept this document. It must be noted that the bishops in the East before the Council of Chalcedon had already accepted the tome. Pope St. Leo, in his letter to Bishop Passionus, Leo related the following, quote, I have sent your love certain passages from our holy fathers, which our representatives presented also in Constantinople together with my letter. You should also know that the whole church of Constantinople, with all the monasteries and many bishops, have declared their assent, and by their subscription having anathematized Nestorius and Eutychius together with their doctrine. You should know in addition that I've recently received the Bishop of Constantinople's letter in which he relates that the Bishop of Antioch, and after sending the letter throughout his provinces, and all the bishops have demonstrated their assent to my letter and condemned Nestorius and Eutychius with the same subscription. End quote. Now note, there are 4 patriarchs before the Council of Chalcedon: Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, and Antioch. 3 out of the 4 accepted the tome as dogma. So the reason why that the Alexandrian patriarch didn't accept it was because he was an apostate heretic. So when we read the second session of the Council of Chalcedon, the fathers at the council are simply professing what they had already signed. So we can conclude by the majority consensus of the tome's acceptance, we can say it was dogmatic before the Council of Chalcedon. After the tome of Leo was read out in the second session, the fathers at the council proclaimed, quote, this is the faith of the fathers. Anathema to him who does not believe accordingly. Peter has uttered this through Leo. The council fathers made their judgment loud and clear. The tome is orthodox. It's the faith of the fathers, and Peter himself laid it down. The tome was the definition of faith before and during the council. This is an issue for my opponent, Bryce J, because if a document needs an ecumenical council for something to be considered dogmatic and infallible, but when we see the tome being considered dogmatic and infallible before an ecumenical council, we can conclude there is a contradiction within his ecclesiology. Now, I want to show the audience in specific the clearest basics to the Vatican I papacy within the third session. Now, note, Dioscorus had failed to show up at the council after being summoned 3 times. The papal legates with the authority of Rome deposed Dioscorus universally in the name of Pope St. Leo. The legates related the following. Oh, my bad. Therefore, the most holy and blessed Pope, the head of the universal church, through us, his representatives, and with the assent of the Holy Council, endowed as he is with the dignity of Peter the Apostle, who is called the foundation of the Catholic Church, the rock of the faith, and the doorkeeper of the heavenly kingdom, has stripped him of episcopal dignity and excluded him from all priestly functions. 308 bishops ratified the papal claims that Peter is the rock of the church, the Pope is the head of the universal church, and that the Pope possesses the authority to remove anyone from the church by his own authority. How does Bryce J explain this? How does he explain such a clear development to the Vatican I papacy? He cannot. But didn't they judge the tome? Didn't they say, I judged the tome to be orthodox in the 4th session? Wouldn't this contradict Vatican I when it says the definitions of the Roman pontiff are of themselves and not by the consent of the church irreformable? The bishops did indeed judge the tome. There's no doubt about that. But it doesn't therefore follow that the definitions of the Roman pontiff were subject to be reformed. I'll explain why. The source of authority versus the mode of reception. The acceptance of the tome at the Council of Chalcedon fully aligns with Vatican I's definitions that the papal definitions are of themselves and not by the consent of the church irreformable. 1. Leo's authority was definitive. Pope Leo viewed his statement as final conclusive ruling precluding the need for conciliar debate on the doctrine itself. As Price establishes, quote, Leo regarded the doctrinal controversies having been settled by his tome. If there had to be a council, he held that it should simply acknowledge and confirm the teaching, end quote. Similarly, Chadwick notes that since Leo, quote, thought his tome settled all theological questions, he saw no place for debate, end quote. This demonstrates Leo's clear intent to speak with a definitive, self-sufficient authority. 2, the council provided verification, not veto. The bishop's subsequent review of the tome was a necessary act of verification in a form to send a truth already established, not a juridical act of conferring authority. Luke Revington decisively refutes the opposing view. Quote, the objection has been so confidently raised that the tome of Leo was sanctioned by the synod after examination as by a superior authority collapses for a want of evidence, end quote. The bishops, by signing it, were witnessing to their own orthodoxy rather than setting a seal to that of Leo. The council's primary function was to promulgate this irreformable doctrine universally and to demonstrate the church's unity. It should be noted that even prior to Chalcedon, as evidenced in Leo's letter to Papias, as I already related above, he highlights to Papias that Constantinople and Antioch had already subscribed to the tome, with the exception of Alexandria, which would be fixed at the council. 3, discussion served instruction, not jurisdiction. The discussions and comparisons with Cyril's letter served as a teaching and pastoral function, confirming the tome's agreement with sacred tradition for the instruction of the Eastern bishops. Schwartz acknowledges that the letter was by no means accepted without discussion on its content, but clarifies that this was not contrary to Leo's instructions, which called for agreement based on discussion, end quote. The purpose was intellectual assent, not jurisdictional approval. Let me repeat that for the audience. The purpose was intellectual assent, not jurisdictional approval. As Don Christopher Butler explains, the church encourages the faithful to, quote, examine the grounds because the faith requires an instructed reason and understanding which mere assent is not calculated to engender, end quote. Conclusion. The Eastern bishop's judgment was a verification of conformity to ensure informed assent and unity in the act of reception. It was not a conferral of authority. The tome's irreformability originated exclusively in the patriarchalism exercised by Leo I, just as Vatican I later defined. For Catholic theology, the acclamation at Chalcedon that all the bishops, Peter has spoken through Leo, is the ultimate expression of the church's reception of an already authoritative teaching. It confirms the view that the tome was, of itself, irreformable as the teaching came from Peter's successor. The council did not make the tome infallible and dogmatic. It recognized and proclaimed the infallibility inherent to the Petrine office that spoke through Leo. The distinction is crucial to the latter doctrine of papal infallibility defined at Vatican I. In short, Peter has spoken through Leo meant the tome was the voice of the apostolic world. After the council concluded, the Eastern bishops made a canon that violated the canons of the Council of Nicaea. The papal legates rejected this canon and thought this was humiliating to the apostolic see. When the legates reported this canon back to Rome, Leo annulled the canon. Leo related the following, quote, but the bishops assent, which are opposed to the regulations of the holy canons composed at Nicaea in conjunction with your faithful grace, we do not recognize. And by the blessed Apostle Peter's authority, we absolutely disannul in comprehensive terms in all ecclesiastical cases, end quote. Leo here thinks that he has the authority from the most blessed Apostle Peter to annul a canon from an ecumenical council. Leo here teaches papal supremacy by showcasing his universal and immediate jurisdiction. St. Anatolius, in embarrassment, blames the canon on the Eastern bishops in recognizing Rome's authority to have the final say. He related, quote, the full force of the acts in their confirmation was reserved entirely for the authority of your blessedness. Thus, your holiness recognized this as firmly established. Nothing of this affair was done by me, end quote. Anatolius clearly believed in the Pope's supremacy that is universal and immediate. How does Bryce J explain that Eastern bishops that are venerated in the Eastern Orthodox Church are clearly teaching papal supremacy? Does his church secretly teach Vatican I? We don't know. But it is a clear-cut contradiction within his church that Vatican I is false. As I already demonstrated, the bishops did teach Vatican I, and the council declared their assent to a dogma. Now, with this, I conclude my time.
Thank you, Talon. Appreciate that. You had 2 minutes left. I'm going to bring Bryce up in a second here. Just want to say how many likes are we at? Can't see. We're at 69 likes. We've got 150 people in here. Get those likes up. Appreciate you. Share the stream with anybody who wants to watch. Appreciate that. Also, questions will be prioritized with super chats. So get those super chats in if you want your question prioritized. I'm going to bring Bryce up now. I'm going to get your slides up here. And then whenever you're ready to start, I'll start your timer.
All right, cool. So my presentation is, well, the topic, did the Council of Chalcedon teach the Vatican I papacy? And that is exactly what I'm going to demonstrate that they did not. What I am going to do is I'm going to show the differences between Vatican I and Chalcedon. I'm going to show the way that the council proceeded, show the lack of supremacy and infallibility being in the phronema of the church, and debunk all of the events which prima facie seem to be denoting Vatican I language. Obviously, standard introduction. The Council of Chalcedon was the fourth ecumenical council of the Universal Church and condemned Dioscorus for breaking canonical law and condemned Eutyches for monophysitism. It was a response council to the heretical Ephesus II convened in 449, and it was convened by the Roman Emperor Marcion. Pope St. Leo was represented by Pascasinus, my apologies, Bishop Lucentius, and the priest Boniface, including Julian of Cos, who sat with the bishops. All patriarchates, except for Alexandria in totality, attended this council because Dioscorus was there at least for session 1. St. Anatolius at Constantinople, Juvenal of Jerusalem in, of course, Jerusalem. Granted, it was not considered a patriarchate yet. St. Maximus of Antioch, that was representing Antioch, and Pope St. Leo's legates representing Rome. Here's the thing, Orthodox papal primacy versus Western supremacy. I'm going to give you some things that I deny and things that I concede. A common misconception is thinking that the Orthodox Church does not hold to any form of primacy in the first millennia of Rome, which is demonstrably false. We have to examine what first means in the two churches, though. Rome, first in the diptychs, honorific, I concede. Rome, exclusive privileges granted by certain councils, like Sardica, I concede. Rome, top of the appeal list due to the primacy of honor, I concede. Rome, exclusive auctoritas or influence in voting matters, I concede. Rome, universal and immediate jurisdiction or potestas over the jurisdictions, I deny. Capability of declaring a document as infallible without the consent of the entire church through voting a judgment, I deny. And a pope can single-handedly handle ecumenical matters without calling a council, I deny. And I'm going to demonstrate all of these things. The first main point that I have here is honorifics. Papal lawyers love to cite passages from the time period that demonstrate that people either claim that Rome is superior or Rome has the authority, perfect faith, etc., to try to show this to support the mindset demonstration of Vatican I. But sadly, this falls flat on its face and even shows that they are presupposing their own position is true already when they're reading into them. Honorifics about supremacy and authority throughout church history has applied to many sees, not just Rome. Honorifics are normally given in response to severely wanting to convince the masses. This is standard in court cases with jury swaying. For example, Peter was not only paid to Rome. We can see in the Edict of Thessalonica, we can see that it says that Peter, the faith of the Apostle Peter was found in Alexandria and found in Rome because they both proclaim the same faith. So they are professing them being orthodox in doctrine, therefore they're from Peter, are appealed with that title, are appealed with that title, and does not imply that St. Peter only applied in general authority to Rome by itself. And also does not show that just because of the faith of Peter is claimed in a diocese, that automatically means that they have some form of infallibility or something extraordinary in power or potestas. There's a reason, by the way, why I'm using these Latin terms today, because they're going to matter to my argument. The example of another event being used outside of Rome, which I'm then going to tie into Chalcedonian thought. We have St. Basil the Great specifically in letter 67, where he says that if you're not in, oh, I forgot the word for it. Wow, it completely went over me. If you're not in communion with Meletius of Antioch, that you are not Christian, right? He had this type of perspective during the Meletian Schism, which then we can see another example here with St. Augustine in Homily 2 on 1 John, where he says, if you be Catholic Christians, communicate with that church from which the gospel is spread over the whole earth. Communicate with Jerusalem. He's literally saying that if you're not part of Jerusalem, that you are not Catholic. So if we take St. Augustine at face value here, it seems that the communion of Juvenal was the point of knowing if someone was Catholic. Therefore, when Rome didn't accept Ephesus II, but Juvenal did, Rome was cut off from the church and was no longer Catholic. Obviously, this is a ridiculous conclusion. Same thing about Basil that I kind of skipped here, but this is about Antioch, meaning that if you were not specifically in communion with Antioch in that time period, right? So Pope St. Leo technically would have been out of communion with the church from 449 to 451, the summer right before Chalcedon, because of the acceptance of Maximus of Antioch. So what does Vatican I specifically claim? You can see here specifically in Pastor Eternus, chapter 3, Council of Vatican I, it says, we shall say that the Roman pontiff has the office If anyone then shall say that the Roman pontiff has the office merely of inspection or direction and not the full and supreme power, potestas, or jurisdiction over the universal church, not only in things which belong to faith and morals, but also in those who can relate to the discipline and government of the church spread throughout the world, or assert that he possesses merely the principal part and not all the fullness of the supreme power, let them be anathema. And since by the divine right of the apostolic primacy, the Roman pontiff is placed over the universal church, we further teach that they declare that he is the supreme judge of the faithful, and that in all causes, the decision of which belongs to the church, recourse may be had to his tribunal, and that none may reopen the judgment of the apostolic see. For none is greater authority, nor can anybody lawfully review its judgment. Let's remember these claims that have been made here. Once we examine Chalcedon, it becomes completely clear. The Tome of Leo, specifically letter 28 to St. Flavian. This famous tome was written in 449 before Ephesus 2, and it was a response to St. Flavian's declaration against Eutyches in 448 at the Council of Constantinople. It was set to dogmatically define the understanding of Christ's two natures. The tome was requested to be read at Ephesus 2, but was ignored. And Eutyches was absolved of his heresy at Ephesus 2, quote unquote, which then established Chalcedon because Dioscorus and Eutyches were now on trial for a robber council that was without conciliar approval because Rome had technically rejected it, as well as some issues with appointing new bishops. Obviously, there were people present at Ephesus 2 representing Rome, but it was rejected. How was the tome treated by the church prior to Chalcedon? Let's see how the church actually treated the Tome of Leo. The vast majority of the church prior to Chalcedon was Ephesus 2 leaning, except Rome, and shortly before the Council of Chalcedon, Constantinople, as well as Antioch in the summer prior to Chalcedon, which is fine, no issue with that, as Maximus assented to the Tome of Leo and went officially into communion with Rome. Theodosius II passed away, and Emperor Marcion took over, which then sparked a new way for the East to accept the Tome of Leo, like St. Anatolius. The rest of the church is unclear on whether or not they were already cool with the tome, which is why Chalcedon was so important. And what led to the tome, it should be noted that Pope St. Leo became involved in this dispute because after being condemned in 448, Eutyches immediately appealed to Leo for a retrial. This is in letter 21. Per the appeals process outlined in the 3rd and 5th canons of the Council of Sardica, Flavian then sends Leo to the council minutes so that he can review the case. Letter 22 begins, but letters 23, 24, and 26 give further details to this. Leo the Great, specifically in letter 34, paragraph 1 states that his excommunication of Eutyches was contingent upon if he perseveres in his perversity. Perhaps this indicated that he was willing to receive Eutyches' appeal to himself and give a positive local judgment provided he repented. Eutyches also appealed to Rome, Alexandria, Jerusalem, and Thessalonica after his deposition by the Council of Constantinople in 448, not just Rome. You can see this in Price and Gaddis Acts of the Council of Chalcedon, Volume 1, page 264. This is yet more evidence that interpatriarchal appeals were not solely a Roman phenomenon. How did Pope St. Leo see his own authority? Papists will claim all day that St. Leo would just throw his authority around and obviously display the supremacy that they think of. Yet in many cases, he admits that he possesses influence from the chair of Peter, but not a final judgment of all truth absent of a council. We can actually specifically see this in letter 33 when we actually look at what it says in the Latin, where it says, the devout faith of our most clement prince, knowing that it especially concerns his glory to prevent any seed of error from springing up with the Catholic Church, has paid such deference to the divine institutions as to apply the authority or auctoritas of the Apostolic See for a proper settlement. And as if he wished it to be declared by the most blessed Peter himself, that was praised in his confession when the Lord said, whom do men say that I, Son of Man, am? Auctoritas, I have that spelt wrong in the little bullet point, means influence or persuasion, not potestas, is common in Roman law. St. Leo's authority continued regarding his excommunications. If we see here in letter 95, he says, for although since their decision was no less blasphemous than unjust, they cannot be held in such honor by the Catholic Brotherhood as they once were, yet they still retain their sees and their rank as bishops with the prospect of either receiving the peace of the whole church after true and necessary signs of repentance, or if God forbid they persist in their heresy of reaping the reward of their misbelief. Leo's excommunications were not binding interpatriarchally. Only an ecumenical council's decisions actually held such authority. Before Chalcedon, Leo actually admitted to lessening his own practice, stating that those he excommunicated still retain their sees and ranks as bishop. This lessening actually refers to him, reversing his local excommunications of Dioscorus, recognizing him as a bishop in any official documents. St. Leo's authority continued as the condemnations we can also see without an ecumenical council, a simple priest could not be defrocked, further emphasizing the limits of Leo's authority. At Chalcedon, Roman legates requested the council to issue a canonical verdict against Dioscorus, demonstrating that the council could not provide a final and binding judgment. We can see that in volume 2, page 69. Leo interpreted the Sardican canons as applying the work of an ecumenical council, not as granting Rome isolated authority. Gosh. Leo nullified his local judgment and deferred to the ecumenical council for a binding decision. Procedural elements at Chalcedon underlined Rome's role within the broader consensus of the church, and during session 1, debate arose over Ephesus II's failure to read Leo's letter. Dioscorus and Juvenal defended themselves, citing logistical reasons rather than dismissing its necessity. In the situation of Theodoret, this is letter 113. I think I had that labeled with that. But I await the sentence of your apostolic see. I beseech and implore your holiness to succor me with my appeal to your fair and righteous tribunal. St. Leo permanently held that the condemnation of Theodoret was unjust prior to Chalcedon, and he held this opinion from 449 to 451, but the rest of the church needed to actually judge the orthodoxy of Theodoret in session 8 of Chalcedon. This is why he had an official tribunal. So the rest of the church did not actually listen to St. Leo, technically speaking. Rather, they only accepted Theodoret's reinstatement after Chalcedon was done. At Ephesus II, Dioscorus had deposed him of being an historian, and this was done in his absence. No opportunity of defense or being interrogated with respect to his faith at the point of the synod was afforded him. He was exiled and his writings were prohibited. Theodoret's own patriarch, Dominus of Antioch, and Flavian, patriarch of Constantinople, were likewise deposed, and naturally Theodoret turned away to the only remaining patriarch, him of Rome, for protection against the unjust proceedings of the patriarch of Alexandria. Alexandria, Constantinople, Antioch, and Jerusalem were gone. Like I said earlier, Jerusalem was not technically a patriarchate, but they were still in voting processes, either deposed or accepted Ephesus II. So it's natural to see, obviously, why Theodoret appealed to Rome, because they were all that's left. Very simple. And his deposition was uncanonical because he was not present to defend himself. So how did the church see the Tome of Leo at Chalcedon? They simply saw it as the same manner as like that of the 12 chapters of St. Cyril, where it was proposed as a dogmatic treatise, which was then judged by the church and then made infallible dogma by the conciliar authority of the church totality. This is actually seen from session 2 and session 4 of Chalcedon and some of the letters of St. Leo, where it's literally said the blessed Cyril taught accordingly. This is the true faith. This is the holy faith. This is the eternal faith in which we are baptized. Into this we baptize. We all believe accordingly. Pope Leo believes accordingly. They're saying that Pope Leo is orthodox. We can see that because what Cyril says. This is in session 2 preceding section 12. It also says in sections 20 to 21 in the proceedings, it says we all believe accordingly. Pope Leo believes accordingly. Anathema to him who divides and who confuses. This is the faith of Archbishop Leo. Leo believes accordingly, and Leo and Anatolius believe accordingly. We all believe accordingly. As Cyril, so we believe. Eternal is the memory of Cyril, as is contained in the letters of Cyril, so we hold. As well as letter 37 specifically to Theodosius, where it says, this is especially so since the point of faith at issue is so obvious that it would have been more reasonable to have refrained from summoning a council. This is obviously one of his things where he says that there wasn't really a point to having a council at the time, which is fine. Although I cannot come, I have striven zealously insofar as the Lord designs to help me to comply in large part with your clemency's orders. He didn't want a council because the issue was stupid, not because of some infallibility of the tome already had solved the problem. That's not the actual problem here. It's the fact that Leo thought that the problem that was happening was dumb, which he chose to comply either way. So letter 102, it says the Holy Council has now, with devoted unanimity, agreed with the letter written by our humble self, a letter rightly strengthened by the authority of my master, the most blessed Apostle Peter, has cut off from God's church these outrageous fictions, which are the views of the devil. I mean that, and then it says, it has cut off the abominable disgrace and likewise condemned Dioscorus of Alexandria for his impiety to keep that church from suffering undeserved captivity under the domination of a heretic. I mean that church which, when the gospel was first being written, was established by Blessed Mark, referring to the see of Dioscorus at the time. The church is the finality of how the tome was actually treated, and the condemnations were based in the council, not off by the tome by itself. You can also see in letter 33, of course, where it says, but because the healing of such men may not be neglected, and the most Christian emperor has piously and devoutly desired a council of bishops to be held, that all error may be destroyed by a fuller judgment. So the church itself is the fuller judgment, not just Leo's tome by itself, right? As well as when the letter of Chalcedon to St. Leo, which would be letter 98, it says, accordingly, we entreat you, we honor our decision by your assent, as well as we have yielded to the head our agreement on things honorable, so that the head also will fulfill the children what is fitting. For thus will our pious emperors be treated with due regard, who have ratified your holiness judgment as law. Ratify simply just means to approve or enact a legally binding act, which would not otherwise be binding in the absence of such approval. The church actually verifies that this is the term that it uses for ratification in the exact same letter. We can see it another section of this letter where it says, in consequence of which We ratified with such moderation as we could the vote which he had passed against himself by his blunders, stripping the wolf of the shepherd's skin. So the same letter states that they ratified with moderation the vote passed regarding the condemnation of Eutyches. So then when they enact the same word is used for the tome, they are admitting that they passed judgment on the tome. The exact same wording is used regarding the condemnation of Eutyches, which obviously I'm sure that Talon wouldn't disagree that the church was the one that judged the condemnation of Eutyches here. As well as in session 2, section 23, where it says, Peter has uttered this through Leo. The apostles taught accordingly. Leo taught piously and truly. Cyril taught accordingly. Eternal is the memory of Cyril. Leo and Cyril taught the same. This simply just means that St. Leo has proclaimed the same understanding of the incarnation that St. Peter did in Matthew 16. Therefore, St. Leo is correct. Cool. The most glorious officials in the exalted Senate said, since the divine gospel is displayed by your devoutness, let each of the most devout bishops assembled state if the definition of the 318 fathers who met formally at Nicaea and the 150 who convened subsequently in the imperial city is in harmony with the letter of the most devout Archbishop Leo. Let them state if it's in harmony. This is judgment language. As well as in session 4, section 60, where it says, since the most devout bishops of Egypt have the time been deferred from signing the letter of the most sacred Archbishop Leo, not out of opposition to the Catholic faith, but on the grounds that it is custom in the Egyptian diocese to do nothing of the kind without approval and decision of the Archbishop. Obviously, I'm sure that you guys all know this event, where specifically Illyricum and Illyricum and Palestine were having issues with the tome, but they did obviously think that it was historian, especially when it was first read. They did not immediately accept the tome, and they were granted to basically defer and not sign it immediately. It's pretty obvious. The church saw the tome as the baseline for the judgment against the heretics after it was ratified by the church first, not prior. This equals to that of the 12 chapters. And St. Leo says himself that the heretics retain their privileges until the council's decision. And St. Leo says that the tome will be used for the fuller judgment at the council. Multiple dioceses disputed the tome, as well as Dioscorus was not condemned for rejecting the tome. But his crimes were political. Nobody mentioned that he was condemned for rejecting the tome, even though that he did. So we can obviously see as well that the tome was not the only thing that the church was binding upon. And then finally, the case of, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get through all of this part. I don't really think that it's really necessary for me to quote here. So I'm honestly going to concede the rest of my time because this is not really something that I think is pertinent.
We've got 2 minutes and 43 seconds left.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just concede the rest of my time because I'll use
Sounds
this probably later on in the debate.
All right. Drop them down just to say we got up to 90 likes. We got 160 people here. Get it up above 100 likes, or I'm just going to end the live stream and we'll just have 2 opening statements. No, just kidding. But yeah, get those likes up. Come on, guys. Also, thank you for the super chats. Appreciate you. You guys, your questions will be prioritized. You should put who the question is for, even if you just do it like underneath in the reply, just so I know. But I could probably figure it out either way. Yeah, let's go ahead. We're gonna do 10-minute rebuttals, starting with Talon. Talon, as soon as you, what's up, man? As soon as you start your first word, I'll start your timer.
All right. So you claim that letter 14, that, and what Leo was saying that, oh, Peter also equals Antioch. Well, when we read letter 14, we kind of get a different conclusion when you actually read the text. Because when we read what Leo says in letter 14, he says, and I quote, he says, and again, there was a certain on whose appointment is the greater city should undertake a fuller responsibility, through whom the care of the universal church should take coverage towards Peter's one seat, and nothing anywhere should be separated from its head. Pope St. Leo is teaching that the one seat that the universal church should take its coverage to is Peter's seat. So according to Pope St. Leo, that Leo equals Rome, Peter equals Rome. You can read scholars like Michael Miller, Archbishop Michael Miller. He also agrees with me too. And you also stated in letter 95. I knew you were going to bring up letter 95, so I already prepared for my thing for that. So you brought up that letter 95 that Leo was unable to remove him universally, and it wasn't until the council. Well, when you read what Leo said in letter 95, he says, and I quote, I have modified my practice somewhat in order that their slow minds might be aroused from by some feelings or a compunction to ask the lenient treatment, end quote. Pope St. Leo in letter 95 says that he modified his excommunication against Dioscorus. And we do know that a full condemnation of Dioscorus would have resulted in deposition by the Pope. you said here that the church was unsure that the tome that was unsure of the tome. That's why Chalcedon was convened. That's not true, as I already demonstrated in my opening statement. Rome, Constantinople, Antioch had already accepted the tome. That's 3 major patriarchs accepting the tome before the council. They don't seem pretty, in my opinion, they don't seem pretty confused at all. They actually do know what they're talking about. And we see this in the letter, if I'm not mistaken, letter 69, when the empress declared that Anatolius has subscribed to Leo's letter. And so, yeah. And you said that Leo and the Sardican canon, you brought up Leo and the Sardican canons. No one disagrees with that. We believe that the Sardican canons reflect Rome's immediate and universal jurisdiction. We don't say that the Sardican canons grant this, right? And you said Theodoret was judged orthodox by the council, but Leo did it before. That is not true. And I want to state this to the audience. Leo did not judge Bishop Theodoret to be an orthodox bishop. He reinstated him as bishop because 449 did not do it right. This is what Father Richard Price says. He says, and I quote, Bishop Theodoret of Cyrus and Ebos of Edessa were reinstated, not in view of their theological opinions, but because their deposition at the Second Robber Council of Ephesus 449 had been tyrannous and uncanonical. So Leo did not judge Theodoret to be an Orthodox bishop. He judged that his trial at 449 was uncanonical. You also said honorifics for Basil 66-7 for Melentius, right? But here's the thing with honorifics and flowery language. Flowery language and honorifics do not reflect reality. Honorifics and flowery language, they have a symbolic meaning towards it. And in letter 67 by Basil, he explains what he means, right? So when we see here that with honorifics, it cannot be applied to the Pope here because we see that Leo actually does do what he said he did and what the bishops claim that he could do. Like, for an example, Leo saying that he can shepherd all the churches throughout the world. That is his responsibility. That's what he says in Sermon 4. And we see him literally doing this by annulling an ecumenical council in the East. So according to the Pope, that this privilege is not an honorific title. It's something that is really inherent to his see. And you brought up that Maximus technically that Leo would have been out of communion, which is not true. We get a different reading when we read the 10th session. It actually says that Leo received Maximus into his communion, not the other way around. So you either misread or you just didn't read it at all. It's perfectly fine if you did. And so you mention a fuller judgment, as Leo says. What Leo wanted was everyone to agree. Leo wanted everyone to be on the same accord that he was to understand what he was saying, right? Because that's what Leo wanted in this council. He wanted everyone to agree with on the basis of the tome's acceptance. This is exactly what he says in letter 120. Leo says, and I quote, "The truth itself shines more brightly and is more bravely maintained when the faith had already taught is afterwards confirmed by further inquiry, and still the good name of the priestly office gains much leisure where the authority of the highest is preserved without a thought that the liberty of the lower ranks has been at all infringed. And the result of a discussion contributes to the greater glory of God when the debaters exert themselves with confidence in overcoming the gainslayers, that what of itself is grown wrong may seem to be passed over in prudential silence." So, in the mind of Pope St. Leo, them judging the tome and them going over the tome by fuller judgment was no issue. He literally says his supreme authority was preserved in doing so. And he says when they judged the tome, they felt more confident in their faith because because the whole point was the testimony of their faith. This is what Bishop Sacropius says when he talks about the Egyptian bishops in the 4th session. He said that the Egyptian bishops, by subscribing to the tome, is a witness to their orthodoxy. So, and this is exactly what Leo wanted. And my bad, I kind of dozed off there. And then you made the claim that the tome was the same as the 12 chapters. I already refuted that in my video that I made about you. You probably didn't watch it, which is fine. So I'll just repeat the same points again. Right. So when we see the 12 chapters in the letter of Pope St. Leo, it's completely different because the 12 chapters was conciliary accepted in an ecumenical council, whilst the tome was accepted by everyone before an ecumenical council. And as according to Leo, that God established this tome by divine institution, and that this was this was the works of the merits of Rome, my bad. And so according to Pope St. Leo, by divine institution this tome was laid down. So, and we see this in evidence in letter 70 when he compares his tome to Cyril's dogmatic letters. He uses a Latin word, and I want the audience to pay attention. He uses a Latin word, veil, right? It means and in English, but in Latin, it just means the same level or identical. In Leo letter 70, he uses the word and when using the tome and when using the dogmatic letters accepted by Cyril. The point where I'm getting at with here is that in Leo's mind, the tome was dogmatic because it's on the same level in comparisons as the dogmatic letters accepted by Cyril. And then you later stated that the Council of Ephesus and how the way the Council of Ephesus II treated the tome, the whole point of the council really was to get all these bishops back in their place, because these bishops had they didn't really accept the tome because they thought it was really heretical, which isn't an issue for me. It's an issue for them, because when we do see that the Council Fathers fully expanding on the tome, saying it's orthodox. So, and then you mentioned that when the fathers, when they compared the tome with Cyril and when they compared the tome like with other fathers, right? And I want to read, and I want to tell you why, and I'm going to read you the acts of itself. The officials told the council that every single time when you read out the tome or when you say the tome, you have to say it's in harmony with the fathers. This is what the officials said. And I'm going to read it now. But before I do, what's my time, host, if you don't mind? What's my time?
You have 1 minute and 50 seconds.
Perfect. Okay. So this is what the council said. This is what the officials, the Senate said. It says, "You should know each of you will give an account to God on behalf of his own soul, and all of us who long before to be taught the truths of religion correctly see every dispute resolved through the concord of agreement, harmonious exposition and teaching of all the sacred fathers. Therefore apply yourselves without fear, favor, and enmity to produce a pure expedition of faith, so that those who appear not will share the views of all to be restored in harmony by acknowledging the faith." And this is how the way the council respond. This says, "No one makes a new expedition, nor do we attempt to presume to do so. For it was the faith, for it is the fathers who taught and expounded and preserved in writings, and we cannot go beyond it." Sacropius, the most devout bishop, said, "There arose an affair with Eutychius. A decree was issued on the subject by the most holy and Archbishop of Rome. We assent to it, and we all signed the letter." It was not the bishop's idea to compare it with Cyril. It was not the bishop's idea to do so. The officials told the council to do so by an account of God, for it can be in the official minutes of the acts of the council. And an example that I would really like to prove is actually within Vatican I with the Relatio and Pastor Aeternus. The Relatio was written to explain Pastor Aeternus because the bishops were confused. So what Bishop Gaisler did, he explained papal infallibility by comparing it with the fathers, by showing it's in perfect continuity and it's in harmony, by like supremacy, this, that, and the third, right? So we see this example even within Vatican I, that they compared Pastor Aeternus with the fathers, and there was no issue. And a really good example that you should be familiar with, Bryce, is that at the Council of Lyons II, they already declared the Filioque dogma. And at Florence, the Latins reopened the discussion, and they judged it just to prove their point to the Greek bishops that this is in fact orthodox, not that the fact that they were trying to say it cannot be orthodox. And that's the rest of my time.
Thank you, Talon. Appreciate it. All right, Bryce, for your 10-minute rebuttal, I'll start the timer when you start your first.
All right, cool. So regarding the letter 95 rebuttal, where he modified his excommunication because the church would not assent, even if we were to say that he attempted to locally excommunicate Dioscorus, right, that wouldn't be an issue for them. That wouldn't be an issue for us just because of the fact that Leo believed that he could excommunicate somebody. Things like that happened all the time in church history, especially at the time of Constantinople II, for example, where St. Justinian believed that he could excommunicate Pope Vigilius. Things like that happen all the time. So I'm not really sure how emphasizing that he locally excommunicated Dioscorus in the first place would be some kind of supremacy being shown. Also, the Leo and the Sardican canons point that you had, that it only reflects Rome's position, or that it's basically just it's just reiterating or something like that, their divine right, that's a cope, because you would have to provide evidence for that to actually be the case. You're just presupposing your own position and that it's some kind of implicit thing that was just brought out through Sardica, which I think is ridiculous. Also, when you said honorifics do not reflect reality, I think that that's honestly a concession, because 90% of your arguments were providing were people providing honorifics to the Pope, therefore that they believed that he was supreme. Dioscorus was referred to in Ephesus 2 as the bishop of the churches, or that he spoke through the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is infallible. The people at Ephesus 2 actually believed that Dioscorus spoke with the Holy Spirit. Things like this happen all the time. And obviously they don't reflect reality. That's my point, is the fact that just because there's some kind of just because there's some kind of honorific applied to some kind of bishop in some way, shape, or form, there's usually a broader context to that, especially like if they're trying to win over their support. As well as the 12 chapters part that you brought up here. Even if Pope Leo did believe that his own letter was equal to that of Cyril, he's referring to it being orthodox, not because of the status of it being dogmatic by itself. He was referring to the fact that the tome itself was referring to the exact same understanding of the incarnation as what Cyril was saying. And regarding the divine institution, where they would say that this tome was laid down by divine institution, that God protected Leo providing the tome, which I would honestly concede that other fathers also had done this. That God had done this with other fathers. Like, for example, St. Gregory, the theologian's orations, St. Cyril's anathemas, St. Athanasius on the incarnation, all of the major documentations that were used, that were declared as dogma, that were utilized to profess the truth. So again, divine institution, and that the tome was laid down via that. And even if he believed that prior to the council, that doesn't mean that then therefore it already was the case in terms of the frontemy of the entire church. It still had to be actually judged to be that case. The church had to actually verify that that was the case. I'm going to go ahead and actually reference a couple other things here. So specifically from your opening, you referenced Eusebius, right, regarding the apostolic throne has been wont from the beginning to defend those who are suffering injustice. Wherefore I, being entangled in unavoidable embarrassments, fly to the only refuge after the help of God in my own afflictions and extremity. Where he actually refers that he requests the annulment of Ephesus 2. But it's a little interesting that was brought up because when you actually look at the Acts of the Council, we can actually see something that Eusebius specifically states in, I think it's section 187 here. It says, when Eutyches, whom I had accused, presented his plaint to the Holy Council, he mentioned that I was his accuser. Why did Eusebius refer to the council as a holy council if that was already in an old council? Obviously, there were multiple people that referred to Ephesus 2 as a holy council still by the time of Chalcedon. So Leo obviously, at least maybe the majority of the church didn't know it was annulled. Maybe that's the case, right? Universal jurisdiction claim would then just go out the window because he claims that it's still a holy council at Chalcedon. He hasn't even actually understood that it was annulled yet. Regarding the, let me see here. I wrote these down in a really bad order because I was typing fast. Go ahead. Let me see if I can bring that section here. Okay, so the Sacropius argument specifically, where it says that the Eutychian matter has sprung up, and on this a form has been given by the Holy Archbishop Leo, and we go by it, have all subscribed to the letter, to which the bishop shouted that we also say the explanation already given by Leo suffices, another declaration of faith must not be put forth. Right? So, though in session 2, Sacropius does say this, Price translates this as, there arose the affair of Eutyches. A decree was issued on the subject by the most holy Archbishop of Rome. We assent to it and have all signed this letter. It's in the Acts, volume 2, page 10. He's later recorded then saying, Sacropius said, the letter of the most holy Leo, Archbishop of Rome, accords with the definition of the 318 and the definition of the 150 Holy Fathers, and with the assent expressed by the holy and thrice blessed Cyril earlier at Ephesus and confirmed by the present council. We have agreed and then signed. This is in session 4, volume 2. Further, when the imperial commissioner stated that the bishops would indeed create a new statement of faith over and above the letters of St. Cyril in the tome of Pope St. Leo, Sacropius enthusiastically stated that we propose that the definition be read out for those who dissent and will not sign, and if those who will not sign it should leave. For we agreed that what had been well defined and raised no objections. This is in session 5. So let me pull this up. Sorry. Also signing the tome prior. We can see that St. Anatolius of Constantinople had begun collecting signatures to the tome well before the council. This is in documents before the council. This is the 9th document before the council. We may presume that the bishops waiting at Nicaea before the council opened will have been pressed for their signatures. In the fourth session, a great number of bishops reported that they had already signed. Volume 2, page 4. Marcion's letter was accompanied by one from Pulcheria in document 3, which then added the significant details that Archbishop Anatolius of Constantinople had signed the tome, and the council would deal with the cases of those bishops which had been deposed at Ephesus, and that in the meantime, these bishops had been told by Marcion to reoccupy their sees even before the council's decision. In fact, the emperor's agents were active in securing subscriptions to the tome, as many as the bishops as possible in the regions dependent on Constantinople and Antioch, as is mentioned in the letter of Leo. This is in document 9 of the documents for the council. Already in 21 October, Anatolius held a synod at Constantinople, at which he and his bishops signed the tome and were formally restored to communion with the Roman See. Volume 1, page 88 for all that. When Theodosius II died suddenly in the summer of 450, the court of Constantinople immediately reversed its ecclesiastical policy, and Eutyches was subject to restraint, and the bishops were pressed to sign Leo's tome as the only way to restore ecclesiastical communion with the West. Volume 1, page 118 from Father Richard Price. This is his statement. Far from it being sprung up on them at the council, as they would claim, obediently submitting to it as the bishops sign it, they state that they have examined the tome and found it to be in accordance with Nicaea, Constantinople, Ephesus, the letters of Cyril of Alexandria. And we can actually see here, Father Richard Price actually adds the important note that the tome took a second stage to the Cyrillian definitions, where he says that the council solemnly approved the tome of Leo. This is actually something that Father Richard Price specifically says himself. And it was a result of Roman insistence that the definition contains an unambiguous statement on two natures of Christ. There were significant non-Cyrillian features of the Christology of Leo, as of in the West in general, in a word. While Cyril treated Christ's human nature as the instrument of the divine word, Leo's emphasis on the cooperation of the two natures in the one mediator of between God and man, the man Christ Jesus, 1 Timothy 2:5. If we take Leo's Christology as our starting point, a very different interpretation of the definition emerges, but this was certainly not envisaged by the council's fathers themselves. They interpreted the tome as simply a confirmation of the insistence by the Home Synod of Constantinople in 448. In its condemnation of Eutyches, that Christ is consubstantial both with the Father and with us men, and that therefore the two natures of Christ that remain distinct even after the union. The distinctive features of Western Christology, echoed in the tome, were of no concern to the council whatsoever. In all, despite the formal approval of the tome by the Eastern bishops, both before the council, at the council, and the definition itself, it remained far less important for them than the conciliar letters of Cyril. This is in the Acts of Chalcedon, volume 1, page 67. Father Richard Price's words for that, since we're quoting him. Also, we could see in volume 2, page 68, people actually raised objections to compare it to Cyril, where it says, similarly, after the reading of Leo's tome at the second session of Bishop Atticus of Nicopolis, argued that the tome needed to be compared to the 12 chapters. In a subsequent informal meeting of the bishops, the Roman delegates had to satisfy their Eastern colleagues by playing down the Diophysite emphasis at the tome. Like I said, this is volume 2, page 68. And in several of the early sessions, it seems likely that an additional debate regarding Leo's tome or the definition took place, but it was not recorded. In volume 1, page 78, Father Richard Price actually states that himself. He makes that argument that there was debate regarding the tome, but it was not recorded, and this is seen implicitly in all of the people that are talking about it. So whether the tome was merely just an opinion or not is irrelevant to whether it had been ratified by a council, which we see that the bishops did. No one actually believes St. Leo just meekly submitted it as an opinion, any more than any other bishop submits a document as just an opinion. Had the council not ratify it, St. Leo would undoubtedly have continued simply sticking to the tome, insisting anyone who wanted communion with him to accept it.
Sweet. Thank you so much for that, Bryce. I'm going to bring Talon back up here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go to 15 minutes for the cross-examination. I'm guessing Talon's going to go first here.
Yes.
So just to be clear for everyone, the person who is leading the cross-examination is the person asking questions. The other person can ask a question, but only to clarify the question that the leader is asking. I'm going to do my best to not interrupt, but if things are getting sticky, I'll try to separate you guys and proceed. Yeah, I think that's good to go. Oh, it already started. Let me reset that. Yeah, Talon, whenever you say your first word, I'll start the timer.
All right, I'm ready. All right, Bryce. So with your critique against Vatican I, do you think that what we believe is that can the Pope decree in opposition to the bishops?
Oh, you're muted, Bryce.
My bad. I would say that the section chapter 3 of Pastor Eternus that I read, that it actually states that you cannot go against the bishop even if the council were to declare contrary.
So are you saying that the Pope can decree in opposition to the bishop? Yes or no?
That's what Pastor Eternus says, yes.
Okay, so why did Pope Pius IX approve this document? It says, and I quote, "In the government of the church, never will they undertake anything which concerns the universal church without taking the counsel and advice of the bishops, as they did before the council." And so now, also afterwards, the Pope summons council and to ask the advice of the bishops scattered all over the world, use every means in their power to obtain understanding, respecting the deposit of faith, which has been confided to the church. So in this document approved by Pope Pius IX, it literally says that the Pope cannot decree in opposition to the bishops. So would you take back what you previously said, that the Pope can decree in opposition to the bishops?
I mean, just because Pope Pius IX states that that whatever is said in Pastor Eternus is not the case, then I mean, like, I think that's a little bit of just a contradiction, in my opinion.
Oh, okay, it's a contradiction. Okay, so do you believe that Vatican I has created a separation between head and members?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what you mean
So
by that.
basically, can the Pope ever be separated from the consent of the church?
You're a minimalist, so I'd say that that's probably what you believe. That can't happen.
That cannot happen. Okay, so with this, in regards to Leo and Chalcedon, it is for the church to examine the grounds when the Pope decrees something, and it is for them to give their consent, not the fact that they gave the authority to the tome. It's that the fact that they acknowledged the tome. And that's what Leo says in letter 120. And I'm going to read you letter 120, and I'm going to ask you a question. So when Leo says, and I quote, "but has corroborated by the irrevocable assent of the whole brotherhood what he had already laid down through our ministry, to show that what had been first formulated by the most foremost see of Christendom, and then received by the judgment of the whole Christian world, and truly proceeded from himself, that this too, that the members may be one with the head. The truth itself shines more brightly and is more bravely maintained when the faith had already taught is afterwards confirmed by further inquiry. And still, the good name of the priestly office gains much in leisure, where the authority of the highest is preserved, without a thought that the liberty of the lower ranks at all being infringed." Okay, so would you say that according to Leo, when they judged his tome, it did not take away from his supreme authority, but rather it confirmed the bishops in their faith?
I mean, like, I obviously hold to the fact that the tome was judged by the council itself. So, like, I don't really know what you mean by that it took away his supreme authority.
That's not what I'm asking, because according to Leo, he says his highest authority was preserved in their judgment of the tome. And then he says that when they judged it, they were confirmed in their faith, not that the fact that they confirmed Leo's faith. So I'm going to ask the question again and answer it directly. When, according to Leo, when they judged the tome, did it take away from the supreme authority of him?
I would say that it didn't take away from the authority, no?
Okay, and so
I believe that he had an authority. I don't doubt that.
Fine. Okay, that's fine. But in letter 120, does Leo believe that when they judged the tome, it was not a testimony of his orthodoxy, but rather their orthodoxy?
I mean, I wouldn't say that it just only says that. No, I wouldn't say that that letter 120 only denotes that, because the actual council in of itself, right, utilizes judgment, and this is admitted in the synodal letter.
Yeah, and even Pope Pius IX agrees that bishops in an ecumenical council are to give their judgment, because now it's in an ecumenical council, as Pope Pius IX says, and I can read you what Pope Pius IX says. He says that bishops in an ecumenical council are to give their judgment. Now that these bishops are at Chalcedon, they are to judge the tome. So would you say that now these bishops judging the tome is an issue for Vatican I?
I would say that it is based off of chapter 3 of Pastor Eternus, yes.
Okay, but as already explained, Pope Pius IX says that the bishops can judge in an ecumenical council, and even Bishop Gaser says he also concurs the same thing. And Bishop Gaser was interpreting Pastor Eternus, and it was approved. So would that contradict your interpretation?
No, I don't think it would.
Oh, okay. Oh, it wouldn't. So,
like, regarding the well, are you talking about Pope Pius IX part?
Pope Pius IX. You do know who Pope Pius IX is?
Yeah, he was the one that presided at Vatican I, right?
Yeah. Okay. So why are you disagreeing with Pope Pius IX when he's the one literally saying it?
Because specifically with Pastor Eternus in chapter 3, that was the section that I utilized regarding that argument. And so if Pope Pius, so it says that the church doesn't go against. It says that the church cannot go against the Pope.
Okay, but within the consent of the church, the Pope cannot go against the consent of the within the church.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so
that's my position. Whatever.
That's your position. Okay, so your position is Vatican I. Got you. Okay, anyways.
No,
so
that's not how
when
that
we
works.
read Sermon 4, of Pope St. Leo, he says, Leo says, and I quote, "And it's still out of the whole world, only Peter's chosen. He is put before the calling of all nations and at the head of all the apostles and all the fathers of the church. Although in the people of God there are many bishops and many pastors, Peter in his own right governs whom all Christ rules as the head." So in Leo's Sermon 4, Pope St. Leo is saying that whoever Christ shepherds in the church, Leo also shepherds. So would you say that Leo in Sermon 4 is clearly teaching universal jurisdiction based off this quote, or no?
I don't think that's teaching universal jurisdiction.
Explain.
No, I think that if he's because if he's pastoring to people, that doesn't mean that he has an ecclesial authority over them by default. Pastoring.
Wait. He's saying that the shepherding is to all of the churches universally. Do you believe it's within? Wait. Do you believe it's within the Pope's prerogative to shepherd the universal church?
I believe that that's something that he's supposed to do. Yes.
Really? So the Pope is supposed to shepherd the universe. Okay, that's Vatican I.
He's supposed to, but
anyway,
dude.
Yeah, anyways, so look, so when we
you think I'm an absolutist, and I don't know why that you're arguing against me as an absolutist.
Wait, hold on. It's my cross exam. So when we read, so with the Sardican canons, right? My question for you with the Sardican canons is that within the appeals of Theodoret, and with this, would you say that the appeals of Theodoret reflect the Sardican structure?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So why don't we see this within Theodoret's letter himself? He doesn't appeal to Rome as a court. He appeals to Rome as the see of Peter, which is a huge distinction.
I'll just say that that's honorifics.
Huh? Say again?
Yeah, saying that he's the see of Peter is just honorifics. Sure.
No, but he says that he can reinstate him as bishop because he's the first see and he has many privileges. So do you believe it's within the Pope's prerogative by his own immediate jurisdiction to instate bishops by his own privilege?
If he's appealing to the see of Peter, right, that doesn't automatically mean that then he can just exercise jurisdiction outside of himself. That's not what Theodoret's saying.
That's exactly what Theodoret is saying.
Asking for an appeal from Rome doesn't automatically mean that then therefore he can just do that.
It's my cross exam. Look, Theodoret, and I can read you. I can read you it right now because you're not telling the truth on what Theodoret is saying. Theodoret says, literally here, he says, for every reason is fitting for you to hold the first place, inasmuch as your see is adorned with many privileges. He says, for I await your decision. If you bid me abide by the sentence of condemnation, I abide, and henceforth, yada yada. So he's literally saying, because you are the see of Peter, and because you are the first see, and your see adorns with many privileges, you can reinstate me as bishop. Is this Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology?
Where did he say verbatim that to reinstate him as bishop again?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Maybe
clarification.
Yeah, he says, I implore you, the insults piled after all my labors on my poor gray head. Above all, I implore you to tell me whether I ought to put up with this uprighteous deposition or not, for I await your decision. If you bid me abide by the sentence of condemnation, I abide, and hence therefore I trouble no man and wait for the righteous tribunal of our God and Savior. So Theodoret in this letter is saying that if it's within the Pope's prerogative to reinstate him as bishop, because the whole context of this, he's appealing to the Pope to reinstate him as bishop, and we see this within we do because we see within the first session he was reinstated as bishop and as the Council Fathers proclaimed.
First off, the council did not automatically state that he was automatically reinstated. He showed up specifically as a bishop, and not because of the fact that he was already reinstated by
Well, that's
Leo.
not what the council said. Do you want me to read what the council actually said?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
You can pause it if you want.
Yeah. Can you pause the time right quick?
Pause.
Okay. Thank you. Let me get this up right quick.
While he's pulling that up, we have more questions for Bryce than we do for Talon at the moment. So if you want equal time for your guy, go ahead and get some more questions in, especially for Talon.
Also, I do agree that there are some people that agreed with Theodora being a bishop prior to Chalcedon. I have no issue with that.
Okay, you can resume the time. I found it. So when Theodoret entered the council, this is what the official said. It says, the most devout Bishop Theodoret, restored to his see by the most holy Archbishop to the renowned city of Rome, has now appeared in the role of accuser, lest the hearing to be disrupted let us conclude what has been initiated. The presence of the most devout Theodoret will be prejudicial to no one, since obviously enough full right speeches and assured blah blah blah. It's basically saying when he entered the council, the official said Theodoret. He was reinstated by Leo. So that goes against with what
okay. So he accepted Theodoret into communion with him. Okay.
That's not but did he reinstate him as a bishop?
I would say that he wasn't a valid bishop until session 8. When the church formally put him into. That's literally what session 8 is.
That's not
the whole point
of it. We read the first session, they literally proclaimed his bishopric. Why did they proclaim? Wait. Pause. Why did they proclaim his bishopric in the first session? Even though according to you, it happened in the 8th session. Why did they proclaim his bishopric in the first session?
Because there were already people that agreed that he was a bishop. No. So what?
Okay. So by the majority consensus.
I said that already.
So by the
majority of consensus?
Yes.
I don't really know if it was a consensus or not. I have no idea.
You don't know if it was a consensus or not.
I don't know if the majority of the church accepted Theodoret by that point or not.
Well, to answer you, they did. So let me ask you another question. Let me pull up my questions. So, do you believe that within Pope Leo, he truly did believe Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so within Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology, you do know you cannot say things that the Pope's apostolic jurisdiction can extend beyond the Western regions. You do know that, right?
Yeah, unless there's some form of appeal that's given where the Pope wants to be involved in something.
That's not what
your. What do you mean that my patriarch?
No, that's not what your patriarchs. The 4 out of the 5 patriarchs accepted this document. Well, hold on. So let me pull this up. So this is the encyclical of the Eastern patriarchs. 4 out of the 5 patriarchs accepted this document. So this is what it says here. Let me pull it up. It says, thus he who is cited by his holiness as a witness of the primacy of the Roman Church shows that its dignity is not of the lordship, nor even applied to which St. Peter himself was never ordained, but his brotherly privilege in the Catholic Church, which called applied jurisdiction of the Pope over the West a custom. This uttered a determination on account of the city, they're quoting Canon 28. And then it says, here nothing is said of the Pope's special monopoly of the apostolicity of St. Peter, still less of the vicarship in Rome's bishops and a universal pastorate. So it literally says, Rome's applied jurisdiction did not extend to the East. It was a Western custom. So why are these bishops appealing to Rome to get their case retried, even though they're in the East? But according to your official position, the Pope cannot do this.
Can I ask a clarifier?
Yeah, of course.
Regarding the encyclical that you're talking about, is that something that is that something? When was that written?
That was written in 1848. It's a reply to Pope Pius IX's letter. Mm-hmm. It's a reply to Pope Pius IX. And 4 out of the 5 patriarchs accepted this: Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, the four main. And but
put it 3, I think. But if a documentation was not accepted by the entire church, it's not considered a pan-Orthodox encyclical. So I'm not really sure how that's relevant.
It's still going to be authoritative here in this case because it's the Orthodox position. Because
if it's not the Orthodox position, if it's not,
if 4 out of 5 patriarchs are agreeing with something here, saying that the Pope's apostolic jurisdiction does not extend to the East, and you're saying that's not the Orthodox position. So what would be the Orthodox position in this case?
Again, because of the fact that,
real quick, if you do make a statement, please allow Bryce to reply to the statement.
Okay.
So just because of the fact that there was a document that was written and the majority of the church, not the entire church, by the way, the majority of the church agreed with a certain position, that doesn't mean that that's in the pan-Orthodox position. So I'm not really that's not how Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology works. So if there was patriarch, yeah, so then you're saying it's the Orthodox position, but that doesn't mean that it's the Orthodox position.
Let me clarify. I'm saying that it's an authoritative position on the Orthodox Church because 4 out of the 5 accepted this. Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. The 4 main patriarchs accepted this document. And within this document, it contradicts your argumentation here because it's saying that the Pope did not have this jurisdiction. So why in this Orthodox document are they saying this?
I mean, they'd be saying that because they have that belief in that certain section of Roman ecclesiology.
Okay.
Again, if something is not pan-Orthodox in the Orthodox Church, it's not something that's automatically approved pan-Orthodox, literally. So I mean, it didn't have the assent of the entire church just to hold that position.
Okay. So within session 10, when the legates in Anatolia said that Leo annulled Ephesus 2, do you believe it's within the Pope's prerogative to annul councils and ecumenical councils?
I don't believe that he actually completely annulled the council. The specific
That's not
term
what
that was
the-
used by Hillary, the specific term that was used by Hillary was contradictor, which means to raise an objection. Doesn't mean that it was completely
when
annulled.
we read what Anatolia said, he says the decisions were instantly overturned. And the legate said that
Anatolia
Leo
supported Rome,
wait,
sure.
And Leo said, and the legate said that Leo was the one who annulled their decisions. And Anatolius, in his letter to the Pope, says it's within his prerogative to do so. So how is it Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology that the Pope can assert his authority over a council, let alone an ecumenical council?
If you want to pause the time, I want to see that. I want to see where Anatolia. I want to see where it was said that it was instantly overturned by Leo prior to the council.
Got you. Hold on. Pull up.
I want to actually hear that verbatim so that I can talk about it.
Got you. Can you hear me?
And then what we'll do, since we have 20 seconds left, is once you find the quote you're looking for, Bryce can answer, and you can ask one follow-up question, and that'll be the end of your time.
That's perfect. Okay, so let me try to find it. My bad if I'm taking it long. I'm trying to read over the 10 session right quick.
You're good.
Of course. We did get another super chat for Bryce. So again, we're lacking a little bit. We have some questions for Talon, not as much as we do for Bryce. And get those likes up. We got 195. You're messing up the grift, dog. You can't answer whatever. You need equal time.
Hey, people can just still send them either way.
We got 195 watching, 116 likes. Go ahead, hit those likes up.
Let's see, 11th session. There we go. Okay, I think I have it. Yeah, I do. I have it.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is what Anatolia says. He says, and I quote, "The late proceedings at Ephesus were instantly overturned, specifically from the time when after this they received a correction that from the very finding pleasing in God. I therefore declare that none of the proceedings out of the so-called council have force, except those regarding the most Bishop Maximus, because Leo resumed to his communion." So that's verbatim saying that the council was instantly overturned by the decision of Leo. And Anatolius is saying, I too agree with Leo. So how is this within Orthodox ecclesiology? And my follow-up question. So how is this within Orthodox ecclesiology that a pope can annul an ecumenical council or a council? How is that Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology?
I mean, if Anatolius agrees with Rome that something should be overturned, that doesn't then contradict my position. That is literally what you're asking.
Now what I'm asking. How is it Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology that a pope can overturn the decisions of a council or an ecumenical council?
And just because of
the fact that Pope Leo believed that that was the case, and then Anatolius agreed with him, that does not mean that then therefore it was then overturned by the entire church, which is why it had to be formally condemned at the Council of Chalcedon.
Okay.
All right, that is time. We're going to do 15 minutes. Again, Bryce and Talon, you'll see it backwards, but that's just so the audience can see it regularly. We'll get 15 minutes from Bryce to Talon, starting whenever you start.
Alrighty. So I promise that this is pertinent, but would you say that when St. Basil or St. Augustine, for example, in their time, used certain language of necessity of being in communion with either Antioch or Jerusalem, that it's just flowery language and doesn't denote a proper ecclesia?
Yeah, I would say that they use that same language the same way Pope Pius XII does when he says that the bishop is in the church and the church is in the bishop. He who does not have communion with the bishop does not have communion with the church. It's the same way that Pope Pius XII, a pope who was long after Vatican I, says the exact same thing, that you need to be in communion with the bishop to be in communion with the one true church.
Okay, so specifically regarding St. Augustine, with Jerusalem, for example, where he says that you are not a Catholic if you are not in communion with Jerusalem. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, as I already explained.
Okay.
Like because in my ecclesiology, I as a Catholic, I cannot sever communion with any of the patriarchs and still be considered a Catholic, because I cannot do that. The same way that Pope Pius XII says that.
So when the schism occurred, Jerusalem went with you?
When the schism occurred?
What do you mean, what schism?
What schism?
The Great Schism.
The Great Schism. What does that have to do with Chalcedon? What does that have to do with Chalcedon?
Because I'm going to ask a follow-up question regarding it with Chalcedon.
Okay, restate the question.
Okay, so did the Patriarch of Jerusalem go with Rome
Yeah.
in the Great Schism? No, they didn't. No, they didn't.
Rome was in communion. Wait,
no.
Jerusalem was in communion with Rome when the Great Schism happened in 1054. Yes.
Oh my gosh, no, they weren't. The synodal letter use of ratification, for example, would you say that the church ratified the decision to condemn Dioscorus, meaning that he condemned universally and infallibly by this point?
Say again?
Would you say that the church ratified the decision to condemn Dioscorus, meaning that he was condemned universally and infallibly by this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so prior to that, would you say that Dioscorus' condemnation was still up for interpretation and argumentation?
No, as Leo says.
That's not true. That's
That is
actually not
true.
even
And
true.
No,
it's not.
Read letter 95 that this is true because Leo said he modified his excommunication for he can literally repent and have an orthodox profession of faith at that council.
Okay, so then he modified whatever that he locally did in order for the council to make a formal decision, right?
That's not a contradiction with my paradigm.
That's it. Okay, so then Dioscorus' condemnation was still up for argumentation prior to the council.
Because Leo said that.
So if it was up for interpretation prior to the council and the word ratification was used in letter 98, the synodal letter, then when it says Pope St. Leo, or when it says the tome of Leo was ratified by the council as well, that would then equal that it's then up for interpretation prior to the council.
That does not mean that. That does not mean that. Because
that does.
Because
that follows from that.
Just because that the council formally puts it in its minutes does not mean that they had to give some type of examine it by a superior authority. That doesn't follow. And as I already explained with Dioscorus in letter 95, Leo said he modified his sentence against Dioscorus because he was going to leave it up to the council.
Yeah, and the church did the ratification of Dioscorus, right?
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying.
No.
Yes.
Regarding the ratification of Dioscorus, it specifically states that it was ratified as condemnation by the council, right?
Exactly what I just
Okay. So then the same letter says that the tome was ratified. So what does that mean?
That means that they accepted it, not the fact that they gave juridical authority to it. And I already
that's a special plead.
That's not a special plead because I already because look, let's make this make sense. If the church had already accepted the tome before Chalcedon, do you think that it makes sense for them to ratify to put in the official minutes of the acts because the officials told them to do so? Wouldn't that make more sense?
This is not. That's I'm not.
Okay. Yeah. My bad.
By the way.
Yeah. My bad.
So regarding Egypt and Palestine, do you think that Egypt and Palestine had the right to reject the tome of Leo temporarily?
They had not. No, they did not have that.
They didn't have the right to do that. So the council was just wrong here when they allowed it.
I would say that they did not have that right because it was orthodox.
That wasn't my question.
Well,
I said, was the council wrong when they allowed it?
Well, the council. No, of course it wasn't because it was disciplinary.
Say that again.
No, because it was disciplinary.
Okay, so the council allowed them to not accept the town. They temporarily rejected the council due to problems that they had. So again, was the council incorrect when they allowed it?
I already told you because it was disciplinary. And if are you referring? Can I ask a clarifier?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, are you referring to the fourth session?
Yes.
Okay. Sacropius verbatimly refutes what you just said. And I'm going to read what Sacropius says. I think this is within the fourth session. Yeah, this is what Sacropius says. Yeah. This is what the official said. My bad. This is what the official said. He says, since the most devout bishops of Egypt have for a time being deferred from signing the letter of the most Archbishop Sacred Leo, not out of opposition to the Catholic faith, but on grounds that it is the custom in the Egyptian diocese to do nothing without the approval of their decision of the Archbishop.
Yeah, I already read that in my thing.
Yeah. So
again, yeah. Okay. So then in that case, if there's no way, right, in your paradigm for, let's say, a certain bishop in a certain diocese wants to reject a certain ex cathedra statement, like something like ineffabilis Deus, for example, if they choose not to sign it for something disciplinary, is that allowed?
If the council is saying it, because it's not out of faith. Right. They literally said.
I mean, it was out of faith. You can see it prior to. You can see it prior to this.
That's not what the official said.
Again, just because of the fact that, dude, just because of the fact that just because of the fact that there are people, especially at that time, that believe that, because like there were obviously people that had different opinions on that at the council, especially because you can literally see that there were people that raised objections to the Tome of Leo at the early on in the council, thinking it was Nestorian. I already quoted somebody that did.
Okay, so
So did he have the right to do that?
Not insofar as the faith, as the officials said, they did not do it outside of faith, but only because they did not have an archbishop. And I want to ask a clarify. So when you say these bishops said that it was Nestorian, what bishops? Clarify.
Say again?
To me in the
I
audience.
mean,
Clarify to me in the audience. When you say bishops,
can you pause the time real quick? I got to bring that back up now because I put that down. Let me bring that back up. So this is in volume 2, page 68. It says, similarly, after the reading of Leo's tome at the second session, Bishop Atticus of Nicopolis argued that the tome needed to be compared to the 12 chapters. In a subsequent informal meeting of the bishops, the Roman delegates had to satisfy the Eastern colleagues by playing down the Diophysite emphasis on the tome. And then there's another one here that I need to find. That was actually the Nestorian accusation. Sorry about that.
You're good. I
dropped all of these out of my thing. Sit on. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to waste time. I'm just going to continue here. I apologize. I can't find it anymore because I dropped it. I said it during my rebuttal. But let me go ahead and just pull up a different section here. You can go ahead and continue. So regarding Saint Flavian, for example, and his appeal to Saint Leo, where he says that over the sacred synod at Ephesus, issuing a decree also that God shall inspire your mind that a united synod of the fathers, both of West and East, may be held, and that same faith preached everywhere, that the constitutions of our fathers may be upheld. It says the bishops who did not consent to this iniquity are much more numerous, as the reading of the above written report of your blessedness shall explain. Regarding Pastor Eternus in chapter 3, where it says the Roman pontiff is placed over the universal church, we further teach and declare that he's the supreme judge of the faithful. If that was something that was implicitly believed by people at that time, then why did Saint Flavian ask for him to call for a council instead of making that decision himself?
Because Flavian, along with Leo, wanted a fuller judgment. He wanted everyone to see this. And with Flavian thought that the Pope alone can resolve an issue to render an ecumenical council useless. So for Flavian, asking for a council is no issue, because this is exactly what Leo wanted, for a wider examination on the case, because he wanted everyone to agree. This is what the scholars say.
But every single diocese, especially at the time, like at the time specifically of Ephesus 2, was in regards, except for Rome with Ephesus 2, right? They were in line with Ephesus 2. Okay, so then the only patriarchate that still remained was Rome, right?
Technically, yeah.
Okay, so then when Flavian makes that specific appeal to Leo to ratify utilizing a council, that would be that would be pretty much counterintuitive to what is declared in Pastor Eternus, would it not?
No, because as I already explained, as I already demonstrated with Flavian's letter to Leo, and I'm going to restate what I already stated, it literally says that Leo alone can settle the entire issue. For Flavian, he believes that Leo can settle the entire issue, and there's no issue with my ecclesiology, because I can pull up Code of Canon Law that states that the bishops in the Catholic Church ought to be in a council for a wider examination to be in a case. I'm paraphrasing, by the way. Because in what we teach, we actually teach that councils are very much necessary, and we want councils. But what Flavian was asking for the Pope to do was to give a wider examination on the case. But even for Flavian, and he himself admits that the Pope alone can just do it.
Okay, so if the Pope alone had the ability to do it, and the entire church was already in a robber council and ascending to a robber council, then how could a council, why would Flavian then be appealing if he believed that the Pope had the ability to basically just nullify everything, that he wouldn't just issue something verbatim that would basically bind the consciousness of the entire church to it?
That's literally what he did. That's literally what he did.
No, it's not, because he literally asked him to make a council. He did not ask him to write a statement that would declare the entire faith verbatim. He
Wait,
stated to establish a council in that appeal.
And as I already explained, that's no issue. But Flavian literally said that the Pope alone can do the issue just by writing a simple letter.
Okay. So that first off, the thing that I just read here is not making that specific statement. I'm reading the appeal to Leo of him establishing a council, but I'll go ahead and just move on from that because this is not going anywhere. You mentioned how Eusebius appealed to Rome and used extremely supremacist language as a testimony, asking Rome to nullify Ephesus too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if this was something that was simply done, then why in session 1 did Eusebius state that the council was a holy council, as Father Richard Price even denotes himself that the council was not nullified yet?
Well, what I would have to respond to that, I would just say that they're calling in a holy council insofar as it's just honorifics within the council, not necessarily that this council was still received as a council and it was for Chalcedon to nullify it. Because as we see within the 10th session, it was Leo who nullified it, and the bishops literally gave their testimony to say that Leo nullified it. So them saying that Ephesus 2 was a holy council does not mean that it was no longer nullified. That's an argument from silence.
Even if people were to say that Leo had nullified the council, specifically like in session 10, obviously that was not the overall consensus of the people at that time, because the people that were a part of Ephesus 2 were still calling it a holy council. So again, if it was still a quote unquote holy council by these people, if it was nullified and it was already nullified by this time, then why were they still referring to it as a holy council if it was a robber synod by that point?
And as I already explained, this is an argument from silence just because.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it is not. I literally just stated how Eusebius appealed to Rome, right, to nullify the council. Like this, which is what your argument is.
Mm-hmm.
And then at session 1 in Chalcedon, it's still referred to as a holy council by multiple people that attended Ephesus 2. So if it was already nullified by that point, then why were people still appealing to it as a holy council? That it was still valid, because a holy council means that it's valid.
Okay. So what I would ask for you, can you bring me more than
ask for me?
Yeah. What I'm asking is just a clarifier or anything. Was there any other bishops that referred to this as a holy council besides Eusebius?
I don't have that specifically in my cross-examinations. It's regarding Eusebius.
I know.
My cross-examination is regarding Eusebius.
It's also
that's not something that I'm bringing for the question. That's not a clarifier. You're just asking me to further bolster my argument. That's not what I'm doing. I'm asking you a specific situation.
The question, and I'll start the time again.
So again, I'm going to ask you this one more time, and then I'm going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if Eusebius believed that the council was still a holy council by that time, then again, that at least shows that there were people that did not believe that, right? That did not believe that it was nullified yet, right?
Probably Alexandria in their diocese.
Okay, so Dorylaeum is Alexandria?
No, because he literally asked Leo to annul the council. Why would he never mind, I can't say that. So for Eusebius, he asked the Pope to nullify the council. And what I can concede is that probably the Alexandrian patriarch in the diocese that was under Alexandria probably still viewed it as an ecumenical council.
Okay, I'm just going to move on. Regarding, because you're a papal minimalist, right?
Yes.
I have a syllogism for you.
Okay.
And you let me know if any of these are incorrect.
Okay.
Premise 1 is that the Pope can only speak ex cathedra with the consent and guidance of the bishopric.
And by God, yes.
Okay. Premise 2, if a section of the bishopric disagrees with the Pope on what he wishes to decree, then they can debate about it, and the statement is not infallible until the bishopric reaches a conclusion.
No.
So it needs the consent of the bishops, yet... So it needs the consent of the bishops, but if some of the bishops disagree with whatever that thing is, then therefore it's still infallible.
As I already clarified in my opening, if you were listening, the bishops help formulate the decree, not make the decree infallible. That is by the Roman Pontiff and by the assistance of God. The bishops playing a role in formulating the decree, not making the decree infallible. That's a straw man.
So it says if a section. Why am I getting a freaking Discord call, dude? Sorry. If a section of the bishopric disagrees with what the Pope on what he wishes to decree,
mm-hmm.
then they debate about it.
Yes.
Then what the Pope wishes to decree would not be infallible until the bishopric reaches a conclusion, right?
No, because you're making look. There's a difference between making the decree and making the decree infallible. The Pope cannot issue out the decree if it does not have the consensus amongst the bishops, but he can make the decree infallible without the consensus amongst the bishops. That's what we teach.
Okay, so the Diocese of Alexandria accepted the Tome of Leo after the Tome of Leo was put out in 449?
No, they didn't accept it. How'd
Okay,
you do
so
that?
that yeah, so then in that case, did Leo get the consent of the entire bishopric?
Yes. Look, because I don't think
Alexandria is the bishopric.
no. Well, hold on. Because I don't think that because I can positively say that if there's a 70-30, 60-40, right? If let's say that 60% agrees and 40% disagrees, I can say that by majority consensus, all the bishops agreed.
What?
Because it's orthodox. If those
So
who
then
not,
it's not the guidance of the entire bishopric, like your position states.
it is. Just because
No,
that
it's
there's
not.
just because that there's a heretic within
It's
the
an
church,
entire patriarchate.
but if he's a heretic, it does not render it at all.
The tome is what makes him a heretic, right?
Yes.
So then that wouldn't even
I
apply to
stopped there.
that because it would be okay. Sorry. I mean, I don't really have another question for that. I was just going to further explain that, but it's not really part of the cross exam. You can move on.
All right. So we didn't really talk about closing statements. Thank you guys for the cross examinations. Do you want like a 5-minute closing or a 3-minute closing each?
I don't really care about to say.
Yeah,
I don't really
yeah,
care too much
yeah.
about one, but we can
Yeah, we
kind
can
of
do that.
spitball something if you want.
Yeah, let's just do a quick like 3-minute one each. I'll just throw up the timer and we'll stay in this format here.
Mhm.
Talon, you'll go first.
Yeah.
I'll start the
So-
timer. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that this debate was very fruitful. We both learned from each other. Very good arguments presented by Bryce J. He's a smart individual, and he actually did get me with some of his arguments in the cross exams. Not gonna lie. I fully respect what he's doing. He's a great man. He's very smart, and I'm very thankful that he took time out of his day to debate me. And with this, and I actually do also want to say something here that if anyone is like they don't like that if they have a poor understanding on the papacy, just read the councils and like this what the scholars have to say. Don't just like take all of your information on TikTok and YouTube shorts. Like don't be a dumbass. And what I would like to say with this for my closing is that I think I did a good job vindicating my position. I think that I've fully proven Vatican I in its essence, and as my burden of proof already demonstrated earlier, in that I think that this was a very good, fruitful debate. I think that we both learned something new. And I hope that Bryce J comes to the Catholic faith, and I pray that he becomes a devout Catholic. And so with that, I end my time.
Thank you for that. I'm just typing your channel name into the comments here. It's Talon for Christ, right?
Yes, Talon for Christ.
Yeah. Just go ahead and subscribe to Talon. I appreciate you coming up here and debating that. And debating the papacy. Bryce, restart the time here.
So I appreciate this debate massively. This was my very first formal debate on the papacy. This is actually something that was kind of on my bucket list, especially. And thankfully, my good friend Talon was the one to participate in that with me. A really, really smart kid. I'm going to go ahead and completely give him that. Very, very smart kid. And, you know, like same thing as what Talon said. I'm not going to lie to you. Like there's a couple of things that when he first asked it, I was like, I didn't read that. You know what I mean? Like, and then like I had to kind of like start sifting through my stuff. So I mean, you know, there was definitely multiple things that I had to look more into, especially during the rebuttals and stuff. But at the same time, though, right? I also agree with Talon on saying how you should not get your information from TikTok shorts. Don't go to somebody's TikTok slideshow posts and get your position off of those people. I'm looking at anybody in the chat that thinks that slideshow debates are a good idea. But I do believe that I've vindicated my position. I think that there might have been a little bit of confusion on both of our positions when it came to like what we affirm and what we don't affirm, like when we were arguing against each other, which kind of made it a little bit speculative at times. But I do believe that I was able to vindicate orthodoxy today, specifically with my argumentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe also it was a very fruitful debate. It's definitely better than the last debate I had with freaking atheists on Christian ethics, that's for sure. But I'm sure Wi-Fi Gospel knows all about that. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I have, and I'm ready to go to Q&A and get absolutely obliterated by the papists sending super chats.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I just put Bryce J's channel link in the comments section as well. Go ahead and subscribe to Bryce. It was a great debate. I appreciate both of you coming up here. It takes balls to come up on the stage and defend your worldview. So props to you guys. All right. We'll get into, let me get rid of this timer. We'll get into this Q&A here. We'll do at least 30 minutes, and if we want to do more, we can, but we decided 30 minutes, so we'll stick to that for now. Richie Torres, last chance, by the way, to get your super chats in. I'm just going to go in the order that they came. Richie Torres, God bless, bro. What's up? No more late night debates with Joel. Hope you're good, brother. Thank you for the support. I will be doing one soon with him. Downloading Silent Hill 2 on my Xbox. Hopefully it's done before he is. This was during Talon's opening. There were long opening statements, right? A lot of debates usually don't have.
The papacy stuff's got to be 20 minutes though, normally, bro.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a lot of argumentation that needs to be gotten through before like we start arguing. Because if we just start arguing about stuff, with like a 5-minute opening, it's gonna sound like we're just like spitballing things out of nowhere.
Yeah, and like literally, like my beginning was like 3 minutes just explaining the position, like what Vatican I even is. And I truly do think that Bryce J, within his best, did really try to defend the Orthodox position, and I believe within my best, I try to believe the Catholic position. And so, yeah, let's get into this Q&A, man. Let's get this over with.
Cool. And some of the questions are a little funny, right? That's fine, but I'm going to read them all because I spent money on them. Also, the person who the question's asked to will get 2 minutes. The person who it's not asked to will get 1 minute, and then that's it. Just one response each.
Okay.
Question for Talon: if papacy true, why filioque false?
Great question.
It's such an interesting question, but I'll take it serious for this time. So, since that the papacy is a divinely instituted thing by Jesus Christ, it cannot be the case that the filioque would be false, because since that the papacy has declared it to be a divinely revealed truth, the filioque just cannot be false. So the question, if papacy true, why filioque false, is just not a correct question to ask, because it doesn't understand what the papacy is.
That'd be a question, bro.
All right. Thank you, Maximus, for the $2. Appreciate you. Let's talk God. Thank you for the $10. Question for Talon: is the Pope allowed to disregard a canon on jurisdiction from a previous ecumenical council that was previously confirmed by the papacy?
Yes. We call this the authentic magisterium. It's when the Pope exercises supreme authority, but necessarily doesn't make it a final disclusive reading, like a final disclusive thing. My bad. Because within the Pope's authentic magisterium, he can very much issue out a decree without it being final, right? But it would just be definitive for his time. So, like for an example, just give an example, like Bishop Bryce J. Pope Bryce J. He can decree that for a time being that Alexandria has jurisdiction over this place. But then future Pope, Pope Alex can say, well, no, I take back what he said, because, times can change. It's only a disciplinary matter. So it's within the Pope's authentic magisterium that he can do this.
Bryce, you want anything?
No, I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
I'm not gonna rebut his question that he answered. I don't think that works well during these.
Okay, no worries. I was just saying at the beginning that I would give 1 minute to do that. So if you don't want to, you don't have to.
I don't really care to. Talon, do you want to just get through questions?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll just do that then. Whoever the question is asked to can answer for 2 minutes, and that's it. Cool.
Yeah.
Maximus, thanks for the $5. He says, all right, real question now, Talon. If papacy true, why EED based?
Dude, oh my gosh, this guy again. Okay. So once again, if the papacy true, why EED based? I'll just explain the same I did. Since the papacy is a divine institution, what it declares cannot err, right? But since that we have formally declared at Florence, EED cannot be true. So now that's how the way I'll answer the question with all seriousness. Like, that's the best way I can do it.
Cool. Now, Brad Goodnight has supported a ton.
Oh, that's my godfather. That's my godfather.
He has a ton of questions for you, Bryce. So get ready. First one. Why did the council explicitly state that its canons required the Bishop of Rome's confirmation to be valid if Rome did not hold universal authority?
I would just say that applies pretty much to any diocese where it's something explicitly with Chalcedon. Of course, Rome was required because Rome was the main cause of Chalcedon in the first place. So, like in our position, right? Like when it says like Rome has to ascend to the council, yeah, cool. Like we totally are okay with that position. And we don't deny that in Orthodoxy. We do believe that Rome is required to ascend to something, just as the same as every other patriarchate would be required in conciliarism.
All right, next question from Brad Goodnight, another $5. Thank you very much. If the papacy didn't possess Vatican I type jurisdiction, How do you explain Leo's veto of Canon 28, annulling a canon already approved by the entire East?
I would honestly just say that this wasn't even exercised by the East, especially after Leo. We can see that very specifically in St. Justinian's edicts, and the fact that it was considered a binding consciousness, especially across the entire East. So the East actually still remained following Canon 28. So I don't really think that that shows some form of special jurisdiction of Rome.
Next one from Brad Goodnight. Again, thank you for the $10.
I'm losing it, man.
If Rome lacked universal, final, infallible type authority, why did Chalcedon refuse to define dogma until its formula was judged and approved by Leo, instead of judging Leo by an independent standard?
I mean, I'd say that they did judge Leo by an independent standard. They judged him specifically by the Cyril's Christology. I mean, like when you say that, like, why did Chalcedon refuse to define dogma? They did immediately define dogma. They based everything based off of Nicaea, Constantinople, and Ephesus, and that would be considered the dogma that was already declared. And then they compared Leo's tome to that.
That's my spot. All right, here we are. Enlightened to seek for the 2 Australian fake money in Australia. Australia is not real, but I appreciate the $2. Host put a clock next to them next time. Yeah, I got to figure out how to do it while I'm not up here. I kind of did one on the fly there, but thank you for that. Brad, good night. Another $10. Thank you so much. If the church always had local...
Hey, if I debate you again, bro, this guy can't be... You got to ban this dude from the chat, bro. I can't keep answering all these.
No, he's getting...
These are good questions. Though. I like this. Yeah, because he's sending you a bunch of money, Alex.
Man, shout out to my godfather, man. I love my godfather.
I like his question. I like his questions. They're pretty intricate.
If the church always had local, regional, and conciliar jurisdictions, what principle stops the hierarchy before the universal level, when that's the only level that can resolve conflicts between synods?
If the church always had local, regional, and conciliar jurisdictions, and what principle stops the hierarchy before the universal level, when that's the only level that can resolve conflicts between synods? I mean, the universal level would be considered the conciliarism of the jurisdiction in and of itself. So if there is a conciliarism, that would be the universal level. So I'm not really sure what that means.
Elijah Yossi, $10. Thank you. Bryce, you said Pope Pius IX is wrong on his understanding of Vatican I. He's the Pope who attended the council. Do you think you know Vatican I better than the Pope who attended the council?
Well, I mean, that's not really a question to ask me as an Orthodox Christian. Obviously, I think that the papacy is wrong in general. So, I mean, that's why I said that, the way that I worded the way that I showed Pastor Eternus, specifically in chapter 3, the way that it words that documentation is that with what Talon said regarding Pope Pius IX, I'd have to look more into what Pope Pius IX said around that. I don't read Pope Pius IX. But I'm not saying that I know more than Pope Pius IX. No, I'm definitely not saying that. I'm just saying that my argument was through Pastor Eternus, chapter 3 specifically. And if Pope Pius IX said something else or whatever, then I would honestly say that seems to contradict whatever that was.
Brad, good night. Another $5. Thank you very much. If Bryce lives in the West under an Eastern Orthodox bishop, isn't that either a jurisdictional breach or an illicit attempt at universal jurisdiction?
I don't even know what the hell that means. I mean, we have Eastern churches that come to the West, and then they're considered Eastern churches. So I don't, just because I'm geolocated to the West, that doesn't mean that then therefore there's some weird jurisdictional boundary like that. I mean, we have a hierarchy of metropolitans and stuff like that run certain jurisdictions in the U.S., which then still have to appeal to the actual patriarch that's in. I'm Antiochian, so I fall under Metropolitan Saba, who is in America, but that doesn't, he's a metropolitan of, I think, Detroit, the Detroit region. But he's still under our patriarch in the East.
Can I add something?
You go ahead.
I just want to say Alex is absolutely making bank with these donations, dude. I swear, bro. Making bank today, bro.
Hey, YouTube's making a little bit too, right? They take 30%. So. Thank you guys. You guys are the stars here. I just sit here and read questions,
and take the money, man.
All
Gotta
right,
gotta make
next.
back all that money that we spent at DB6, bro.
Yeah. Bryce already crowdfunded his way there, so I'm doing it on the back end.
Bryce, we could have just had this debate before your trip, and it would have paid for it all.
Yeah, dude, he
Good
wouldn't
for
have gave me
me.
that money. Alex would have stole all of it, man. He'd been like, no, there's my DB6 trip.
All right, wrongful rage 9405, $5. Thank you very much. He says this is explainable through Canon 3 of Constantinople 1, Ecumenical 381. Ask him about dispute of Pope Stephen versus Saint Cyprian. This might be for Talon.
This might be for me. I would need to know the context. I would need to know the context.
I don't really know. I'm about to say, I'm not sure
ask him.
Yeah.
I asked him for more context, and this is what he said. I don't know if this helps. Pope made edict that barbarians could baptize themselves. Saint Cyprian was second in West and held local synod in North Africa to refute papal claim, never excommunicated. And wrongful rage did say yes, it was for Talon.
Okay, so how the way that I respond with Saint Cyprian in that matter, no case scenario would Cyprian be vindicated as Orthodox in this case, because if you admit that Cyprian was under the jurisdiction of Rome, then Pope Saint Stephen had every right to excommunicate him, and he had every right to depose. Like, that's within his right, because if he's under the jurisdiction of Rome, or if we can say that, well, he wasn't under the jurisdiction of Rome, then Cyprian is literally saying that the Pope, that he is trying to attempt to go outside of his own jurisdiction, and he's saying that only tyrants act this way. So I would say that in either case scenario, Cyprian is wrong, because when you go to the rebaptismal controversy, not even St. Augustine accepted what Cyprian thought. And I'm going to read you what St. Augustine said about Cyprian. This is what Augustine says about St. Cyprian. Let me pull it up. This is what Augustine says. He says, and I quote, "I do not accept what Blessed Cyprian thought about baptizing heretics and schismatics, because the church for which Blessed Cyprian shed his blood for does not accept this." St. Augustine says that what the church holds is not what Cyprian holds. So all case scenarios, Cyprian would not be vindicated as Orthodox.
All right. Louis KN 4PM for the 5 Swiss franc. Thank you. Appreciate it. For Talon, if Anatolius believed that Ephesus 2.
Mm-hmm.
See, there's my prot coming out. All right. Ephesus 2 is instantaneously annulled. Did he effectively deny his own episcopacy since he was consecrated at Ephesus 2?
That is an amazing question. And the answer is no. Because when we see that when Ephesus 2 was overturned, Leo accepted him as bishop, even though that the action done was illicit. But Leo still accepted him as bishop and received him into his own communion. So just because Anatolius believed that Ephesus 2 was overturned, but still he was still bishop, he was still bishop because Leo accepted him, and he accepted him as bishop. So no, Anatolius did not effectively deny his own episcopate by saying that Ephesus 2 was overturned, because Leo denied some things and he accepted some things within Ephesus 2.
Right. Elijah Yossi for the 20 bomb. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bryce, in Lateran 649, Rome was the only Orthodox patriarchate. The whole East fell into heresy. Did the Pope have the full consent of the Church? If not, why did St. Maximus the Confessor believe Rome alone was enough?
Well, I recently started studying the papacy about a month and a half ago. I have not looked into any of the events surrounding Lateran 649. So I can't really give a specific statement on that. I'm sorry you had to waste $20 for that, but the only things that I've currently looked into is the events surrounding Chalcedon and the events surrounding Constantinople II, and a little bit of the third Constantinople Council as well.
Bryce, sorry about that. Elijah, go study, Bryce.
Thank you. I will. It's something I study. I just for a month and a half I basically just banged out stuff from Chalcedon. I didn't really, and then I did a little bit of stuff on Constantinople too because I thought it was interesting. But again, I haven't studied Lateran 649 yet.
Yeah, there's tons of material, I'm sure, regarding the papacy debate. All right, Cleave to Antiquity with the $2. Thank you very much. Question for Talon: if papacy real, why Bryce win debate?
Good question.
Cleave, dude.
But something that's really interesting with Cleve, I would actually like to formally debate Cleve to iniquity. If I formally challenge you to a formal debate, Cleve to iniquity, and
He can't do that yet, though.
We can set it up. DM me. We can get it started soon as next month or 2 months. Let me know the time.
Can I want to say something about that real quick, by the way, because Cleve's Antiquity just recently became a catechumen, and he's not debating until he actually receives that blessing, I think, through being baptized and stuff. So that's not something that he's doing. He's going through catechesis.
But look, but I will say this: anytime when he's want to debate the papacy, tell him to DM me.
Right, you heard it, Cleve. In a couple of years, when you're baptized and you get the blessing, it's on.
Couple of years, is he in Rocor? Holy moly,
Dude! I don't know how long these takes. I'm not even a catechumen yet. All right, take it easy on me. All right. Wyan Boo, thank you for the $5. Appreciate it. Question for Talon: why is Agen running from Wayne the Great?
Because Agen don't want that smoke, man. I'll tell you why Agen don't want that smoke. He gonna get his ass whooped. He already know. He gonna get that ass whooped if he debate Wayne, man. And man, Agen don't want that smoke, man. I don't
ever want to see you up on this panel ever again.
Agen know that ass will get whooped if he'll try to ever debate Wayne. That boy Agen knows what's up, man.
Well, Maximos, thank you for the 5. Maximos again with the 5. Thank you. Question for Talon. L answers, by the way, so I got another one. If papacy true, why does Polymos have so much aura?
I'm not answering that. I'm not answering. I appeal to mystery.
Contemporary compendium.
Agen just said, why did I catch a stray? That's what Agen said in the chat.
Appreciate that. INRMDS. Am I supposed to say that, or is that just a spelling?
Yeah, okay.
Inrimdus. Question for Talon. Can popes be heretics, and can they be deposed? If so, how would this go about?
Yes, a pope can be a heretic, and yes, he can be deposed. This is what the scholastics and theologians say. And how the way that this would happen is 3 steps must be acquired. First, the pope must be warned. 2, he must be suspended. And 3, a council must depose him. So the pope can be a heretic and he can be deposed with the 3 lawful criteria proposed.
Schoolboy, thank you for the $1. Also, thank you for not spam banning everyone that made you upset. That was good. I like to see that. Octavian with the $10. Tip for Chef Bryce J for some great at cookies. Well, I'll take that tip on his behalf, and I'll.
Thank you.
I've already sent him enough super chats, so it's a wash.
Yeah, it's all good. He's dedicated some super chats to my channel, so we're good.
All right. Wrongful Rage with another $5. Thank you very much. Talon, Augustine died in 440s. The dispute between Stephen and Saint Cyprian was in 807. Explain how he made a quote on Saint Cyprian.
I think I misread. I'm unfamiliar with the dispute with Stephen and Saint Cyprian in 807, so I cannot give you a full proper response. I thought you were mentioning the dispute that happened in the 3rd century with Stephen and Cyprian.
And the last one, if anybody wants to get more in, now is the time. We have in-room again. Bryce, are microplastics under anathema?
Yes.
Yes.
But sadly, I drink plastic. I need to stop. But glass is a bit inconvenient in today's world. So
yeah, my wife. Thank God for wives, because all this stuff is just. I'm like, dude. If I was single and alone, I'd probably have microplastics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But she recently threw out all our plastic, eatware. Is that what you call it? Eatware, whatever, plates, all that stuff, and we got all glass and ceramic now. All right, we got some more. Cleave to Antiquity, another $2. Thank you very much.
What is
Talon? If I ask nicely, will you become Orthodox?
Bro, dude, I feel like all the serious questions have been asked to Bryce, and these dumbass questions have been asked to me, dude. No, if you ask nice, I would not become Orthodox.
All right. Ecclesia Romana, €5. I just got dog, I'm in there. You got pounds. I'm a proper what do they call 'em?
DJ.
I'm a proper roadman now. For Bryce, does Eusebius calling the robber council holy change the fact that he believed Leo could annul and reinstate him as bishop? Like
I mean, I would just
Theodoret.
well, I mean, let me actually pull it up here because that specific statement that he makes is the apostolic throne has been from the beginning to defend those who are suffering injustice. Wherefore, I, being entangled in unavoidable embarrassments, fly to the only refuge after the help of God in my affliction and extremity, desiring to find a release from the ills that have befallen me. To your see, I entreat your blessedness, pronounce the reversal, evacuatio, and nullify of any unjust condemnation by the most religious Dioscorus and of their decree, and give me back the dignity of my episcopate and communion with yourself. Yeah, I would just say that he's appealing something in a very flowery way, and he's saying, Rome, please help me. Right? There's nothing wrong with it with somebody appealing to Rome in regards to saying, please help me. Like, because remember when you think about it in Ephesus too, Rome was the only patriarchate left. So if he's appealing to Rome to actually solve the problem, that doesn't automatically mean that then Rome has some special jurisdiction. It's because Rome was literally the only patriarchate left.
Wait, and can I?
But
I want to say something with that Stephen and Cyprian, dude.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm so confused because what happened in 807? Like there was yeah, bro. Like the dispute between Stephen and Cyprian was in the 9th century. I am so confused on what you're referring to. I think I'll have to do some research to it. I am so unsure on, and I think I might be unwell.
I don't. Am I tripping, or is there a Saint Cyprian in 807? I don't know about one.
I don't remember them being in like a whole rebaptismal controversy in the 9th century. I'm pretty sure that happened in the 3rd century. I'm pretty sure he's mistaken.
I don't know about somebody that in the 807 named Saint Cyprian. Maybe I'm just not read in the 9th century, but I don't know about anybody named that in 807.
Bro, this guy Agan has me dead, bro. He's like rebaptismal controversy part 2, the movie. The guy has me dead, bro.
Emmanuel, thank you for the $5. Maybe papacy one day become real. I pray the Pope one day bench 405 and have beard and some swag. Interesting.
W Father Moses, bro. W Father Moses.
Yeah, just call it raps in the debate, bro.
A donation for Bryce to get a metal water bottle.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you for the $2. Like itch. Word. Wyanbu, another $5. Question for Talon. Thank you very much. Are you considering becoming a Waynian, the greatest Thomist to ever live?
You know, you had to write the great Thomist. Man, dude,
better than Thomas Aquinas, bro. The greatest Thomist to ever exist.
Dude, I'm not answering that question, bro. Just like this has become brain rot. Like it's just become brain. Like at first it was serious. Now, like this is a good question. Like this is a good question. Okay,
right, let's talk God. $5. Question for Talon. Can a pope, while in heresy, speak ex cathedra since he still has the power because of his seat before being formally excommunicated?
I would say no, because God would either kill the Pope or just impede him before making an ex cathedra statement. Because the Pope, he can't bind the church into heresy. So what would happen is that God would just impede the Pope, probably making his hands not move, or just killing him in general. Like the Pope, he cannot bind the church into heresy. No.
Appeal to God killing people, bro. That's a fallacy. That's got to be a fallacy somewhere.
All right. Next, in room Bryce, are you going to make another Filioque book?
I mean, I don't really need to make another one right now. I do want to make one that has a lot more logical argumentation, because 95% ish of my book is patristic based, and then a very small amount of it is logic and philosophical arguments. But I do want to eventually make something. I can't do it right now though, because I'm currently, I'll just announce it here, I'm currently in the process of making a book. It's about the same size, on basically arguing for the essence energies distinction in the first millennia and explaining the entire thing basically down to pretty much everything that I've ever talked about or read.
And where is this book that you have? People are asking in the chat.
It's not like an official book. It's just a PDF that is for free on my Discord, discord.gg/BryceCord. It's literally just a book you guys can go grab for free. It's just called Against the Filioquist.
Cool. Octavian for $10. Appreciate you. Talon, if papacy real, why Pope pray to Allah?
I'm finna leave, dude. Oh my gosh. So,
Hey.
like, what are these questions, dude? Look, like we don't pray to like a two-handed God like how the way that they do. We just say that the reference of the God is the same. Like that's literally it. Like we don't literally believe. Like we pray to a two-handed God per se, bro. Like what is this, bro?
Inrimdus Talon, was Pope Honorius wrongfully anathematized?
That I'm still looking into the issue because it's within the overwhelming scholars that like Honorius was not a heretic. Like majority of the scholarly patristics do say this, but me myself, I cannot make a full statement on it because I'm still researching the matter.
Okay. Contemporary Compendium, $2. Thank you very much. If papacy real, why women run Vatican City?
Dude, what is this?
Cleave to Antiquity, $5. Mortalitum, I'm definitely not saying
Mortalium.
that right. Mortalium Animos says prayer services with Muslims is apostasy. Does that mean the modern popes are apostates? Sorry, I had to do the emojis.
No, the answer is no, because that was only for their time being. So it was only like a disciplinary matter, not like a full, final, conclusive ruling. It was only disciplinary.
Right, and I think that is all of the super chats. I was told I would be doxxed if I didn't do this, so this is just for the memes. But we have a friend
Hi,
who wants
Talon.
to say hi.
Oh my goodness.
I don't ever want to see you on these panels again.
Oh man, dude.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Tables have turned real
In
time.
Inrimidus says Talon for $2. Become Orthodox, big bro. If Islam false, why did Pope kiss Quran a lot? Perm found this is
So look,
These
actually, okay,
questions are so bad, dude.
I actually do want to explain this issue. So when the Pope, when he kissed the Quran, he actually did it by accident because the Bibles during the time, like they look like Arabic, they look like the Bibles and that region look like Qurans, and so the Pope was kissing lots of Bibles, but a Muslim slipped in a Quran and he did it by accident, and that's where you get that famous picture from.
What?
question for Talon. This is payback for Brad's hitting Bryce with all the questions. Talon, how would you interpret Canon 9 of Chalcedon in light of Rome's supremacy?
Let me read it. Like, hold on. Canon 9 of Chalcedon. So when it says, if any clergyman have manners against another person, he should not forsake his bishop. Yeah, there's no issue. It's just talking about an apostolic structure to Constantinople. There is no issue.
Right. I feel bad because I read all the other ones.
Gotta read it, dude.
Why the Pope allow gay parade to
I'm
Talon?
gonna leave. I'm gonna leave, dude. Like what? Like where are these?
This is the nature of YouTube super chats.
Appeal to banana peel, bro.
All right, I think that's it for the night. I
Yeah,
appreciate all the
please
super
make
chats.
that. Please make that everything.
Thank you
so,
very
I'm
much.
done with these questions.
Bryce, Talon, you guys are awesome. Thank you for staying as long as you
Of
did.
course.
Thank you for participating in the debates. Anything else you guys want to say?
Bryce, you can go first.
I mean, honestly, like everything I wanted to say was in the closing, brother. Because like I really loved doing this debate. This was my first debate that I actually wanted to do on the papacy because Chalcedon was the first thing that I wanted to look into. Obviously, I'm going to keep studying on whatever I'm doing. You know what I mean? But now that I've had this debate, though, I'm going to start diving really hard into Christology. So, Agan, if you're still watching, I'll be reaching out to you soon, brother.
Ooh.
But other than that,
Ooh.
that's pretty much all I got, though. Appreciate you for taking the time out of your day as well, Talon.
Of course. And
For
what I
jumping in.
like to add, I think that this debate was very good, fruitful. We both demonstrated our positions. We both gave good rebuttals. Iron sharpens iron during the cross exams. I think that this debate was good. I don't see any flaw within the debate. And overall, I think that everyone should watch this debate for their first papacy debate. I think that this was a really good debate.
All right, you guys can stay if you want to. I'm going to read the last few super chats that came in. If not, have a good night. I appreciate you both being here.
All right, I'm finna drop.
Appreciate it.
So God bless.
Word.
Oh, anybody in Bryce Cord, by the way,
yeah.
I'm gonna do a Jackbox fun thing where we're just gonna play Jackbox and nobody record it though because we'll definitely get canceled. But yeah, that's gonna happen. So
Do you want me
guys later.
to drop a link?
Yeah, you can put a link in for the Discord. I don't care.
All right. Discord link is going in the chat. If anybody wants to join, this is Bryce's Discord.
All right. So that will be it for me for today. So yeah. So without further ado, name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. So God bless.
God bless, brother. All right. If Eastern Orthodoxy true, why do the Russian and Serbian churches deny women taking the Eucharist and venerating icons while they're menstruating? Ooh, you hear that, Bryce? You want to come back up? When Pope fasts at Ramadan, does Talon become ortho, bro? That would be rough. If God real, why Talon? What is this? What that is? Inrimdus, you know you want more money, Unk. Listen, I'm 29. I'm not an Unk until next year. Okay, I'm pretty sure 30 plus is Unk, right? So put some respect on it. I appreciate you all being here. Hit that like and subscribe on your way out. Thank you for the super chats. It was an awesome debate. It'll be up on my stream. I know Bryce. I'll get a copy to Bryce and Talon, and they can post it on their channels as well. All right. Have a good night, y'all. Hold on. Before I end. This person doesn't know me at all. It's completely unbiased. I mean, but he speaks facts. Good night, everybody.